for the recording purposes.
We will come to order at 10.
I guess we called the meeting to order at
10:06.
10:06. Moving on to technical acknowledgement, the Students' Council of Waterloo Undergraduate Students Association acknowledges that we live and work on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract. Land promised to 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. As always, we encourage every councillor and at-large member who is attending today to learn about the history of the land they live in, be it University of Waterloo or wherever they are, and learn how colonialism still impacts us today. Approval of agenda. I'm going to assume on consensus the agenda unless anyone has any amendment they would like to present. Mike, go ahead.
Just to clarify, the agenda should say that we are approving August 22nd, 2021 minutes. And secondly, I think the items by consent is a holdover from last meeting, just a part we forgot to delete. If somebody wants to double confirm that, just help me out.
I think we still have to approve the ABP experimental and co-op affairs. The other 2 are the ones from last meeting. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the thing that you just said. So pardon me.
Perfect. Okay, this is interesting. I cannot see the chat. Shoot.
It's Catherine.
We'll figure that. Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
Okay,
Catherine,
I can read. So there's a motion to move item 6.2, which is the amendment and interpretation of procedure 25, to be the first general order considered. So Catherine will move that and I'll second it. And I think this is because we have guests joining us and it's for convenience.
Sure. We will take that on consensus unless anyone has any issues with that, I guess. Seeing none, I guess 6.2 is the 6.1 now, and 6.1 is 6.2 now. Catherine, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up, or is that hand from that? Okay, perfect. Moving on to items, approval of minutes. We already mentioned that we are approving the August 20-something minutes. I believe August 22nd minutes. That's right, Mike. Does anyone have any issues that they would like to bring up in those minutes? Just raise your hand. Nope. Well, the one thing, Mike, I just want to mention was in the Math Caucus report, it says ESRAs. It's USRA. Perfect. Seeing as no one else has raised their hands, we are good to go. Perfect. I guess we will officially vote on the approval of minutes. Is anyone against or abstaining? Nope. Perfect. Okay, we can move on. Item for adoption by consent. 3.1 ratification of associate vice president and commissioner appointments. As we had just mentioned beforehand, the only one that's going to be approved right now is Dawood Khan for ABP experimental and co-op affairs. Does anyone have any issues with this approval? Going once, going twice. Seems like we will assume that item by consent and we have ratified the commissioners. Reports is the next section. We'll go to the executive reports first. We have the president. Ben, do you gonna take over?
Yep, thanks, Cannon. Obviously I submitted my written report for council's information. A couple highlights are the letter of support and proposal for Office of the Ombudsperson at the University of Waterloo. Steph and I have worked with our counterparts at the Graduate Student Association to come up with a proposal to act on the recommendation 12 of the President's Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health from 2017 to have sort of an independent arbitrator / information access point on campus. We have tabled this at our Undergraduate Student Relations Committee of Senate and look forward to working with stakeholders across the university to advance this project and see where we go. So I encourage people to take a read at it and let Steph or I know if you have any questions. Then the only other thing that I want to say to council that I included in my written report, we have begun working with our governance consultants, Risser and Hughes is the name of their partners, on addressing sort of the structural dysfunction in our organization, including the lack of organizational clarity of responsibilities between the board and council, sort of the unnecessarily complicated governing documents in our organization, the lack of engagement from students, all sorts of issues that have come up at council in different ways in this term and in my experience in years past. I want to say clearly to council right now that you should be advised that the review's recommendations may lead to significant changes to WUSA's governance, including changes to the powers, size, and composition of board, council, and the executive. To ensure that a new governance model can be implemented by next governing year, the consultants have advised that we may have to postpone elections until after the passage of new bylaws. So this is a significant change. Like these are like this would be a disruption from our typical governing cycle. And the report from the consultants we expect to table at the November meeting of council, which will give us November, December, perhaps January to consider implementation. Our bylaws state that we have to have an election before reading week. Council procedure says that we need to have a nomination period of 13 weeks. And last year's council approved a motion to open the nomination period on the 20th of October. Council meets on the 24th of October. So depending on how the process of the governance review goes, I may call a special meeting of council to suspend elections procedure to push off nominations to give us time to figure out how elections fit into our new governing model. And understanding that this is, again, a departure from what is typical, but I want to be clear to council and not have it seem like in 2 months when we come with this report that we're trying to ram something through. So please be advised. Hit me up if you have any questions. And then the only other thing I'll add on is this coming week on the 29th and 30th of September, the councilors will have an opportunity to attend focus groups, to meet with the consultants. They'll have questions prepared for you. You can ask, state your opinion on your experiences with WUSA governance and include your voice in this review as student representatives. I will send a follow-up email about this, but feel free to contact myself or Mike Sameta, who's sort of coordinating with the consultants for us. Cannon.
Just wondering, you mentioned that we might have changed our bylaws, and from my understanding, bylaws can only be changed at a general meeting. And if we need to have our elections before the reading week, that means and if we want to change the bylaws, that means the general meeting will have to happen before the reading week. But I think somewhere in our bylaws it says, I guess the general meeting needs to happen in the 3rd month of the winter term.
Yep.
So how does this conflicting things work around?
Sure. So the board of directors can call a special general meeting outside of the timeline of the annual general meeting, which is held in March, or according to I think the Corporations Act, it's like within 13 months of the last general meeting, which for us was held at the end of March 2021 this year. So again, like, we don't have recommendations. We're not sure exactly how this is going to play out, but it could look like the board of directors calling a special meeting to propose bylaw amendments and showing them to council, and council would act as likely a meeting of delegates, as we've done for the last couple of general meeting cycles. And there are notice requirements, and it's sort of detailed in the bylaws, but it would be, again, like an extraordinary thing in our governing cycle. So yeah, want to be clear about that, because, you know, I do believe that a lot of the problems in our organization come down to governance, and I think it will take a bit of risk taking to get us to a better place. And I think the council is really well placed to take some leadership on this. So want everybody to be up to speed and in the loop. Okay. Vincent?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm a bit concerned if a meeting of delegates to me doesn't sound like an appropriate place to like enact major significant changes to how the entire organization operates and is structured. Like, I know we can, but it doesn't seem like it would be appropriate to do so.
Sure. So the meeting of delegates I'm referring to, or a special general meeting, really, they're like the same thing, is specifically for bylaw amendments. That's sort of the concern. And that is the body that has to, like, bylaw amendments have to go through a general meeting. A general meeting requires a 200-person quorum, which is, on one hand, historically difficult to attain. And on the other hand, I am skeptical that we'll be able to hold such a meeting in person anyway. And facilitating one online would also be difficult. There are other aspects of the governance review that, like, for example, like our policies and procedures would involve, like, you know, council and board respectively in the executive, and can involve some review from constituents. But I'm referring specifically to bylaw amendments because that's sort of the concern in like the cycle of affecting a change. But I do encourage councilors to reach out to their constituents to sort of talk about governance and what people think about it. My kind of view is, by and large, people are kind of disinterested in how our organization functions. And you know, by being a governance volunteer with us, like, you folks are very well placed to speak to how you've experienced it, you know, by stepping up and being student leaders. So I guess keep that in mind. Mike.
I will say that another group that I am scheduling to meet with the governance consultants is at-large students. So if there are students interested, please reach out to either Ben or I with their email, just so we can coordinate the best time for a focus group of 10 or so students who may not be representatives right now, but have a good idea of the structures that exist and what some of their complaints or issues with that might be.
Does anyone have any other questions for the President's report? Seeing none, we can move. Go ahead, Vincent.
Yeah, maybe you said this, but I missed it. If counselors want to be part of the focus groups and I guess talk with the consultants about the changes, like, should we reach out to someone, or will you be reaching out to counselors?
I will. It looks like Mike might have a better answer because he's been coordinating, but yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I have built a form that Ben will be sending out after this meeting, with 2 time slots that councillors can be a part of. They're both in the evenings. One is on a Thursday and one is on a Monday. So we will send that out following this meeting so people can pick their best time slot.
Thanks, Mike. So those might be different dates than what I indicated in my report, but stay tuned for an email. And my experience is the governance consultants send questions in advance for people to review. So what I can do is send those questions to all of council. And for those who are unable to attend a session in person, you're invited to send written responses as well. We want like everybody to be involved. We're not trying to we're trying to avoid the impression of a power grab or something. Like, that's definitely not what's going on. Even though it is a departure from the status quo, trying to make some change in the org.
Thank you. Last call for questions for the president's report. Going once, going twice. Okay. Let's go to the VPOF report. Matthew, take it away.
Thank you so much, Shannon. So I don't have a huge amount to add to my report. There are some things I'd like to highlight, however, that'll likely be very important to your constituents. A number of them I've harped on before, but due dates are coming up, so I just want to bring them up once more. The special UPass opt-out period continues until the 28th of September. This is where students outside of the region of Waterloo have the opportunity to get a refund for the UPass they won't be able to use this term. They're required to submit proof that they aren't in the region, but that ends this September 28th. So very important for students to be aware of that and get their stuff in before that. Similarly with health and dental, the 100% opt-out deadline on the September 28th is when they have until the change of coverage period ends to opt in or out of different parts of the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association health and dental plan. Other than that, I don't have a huge amount that I want to call out. I report quite a few more things to board, so these are all the council-facing things. But overall, I'm happy to accept any questions on my report or anything else in my portfolio.
Anyone has any questions for VPOF? Going once, going twice. That was a quick report. Perfect. We can move on to the next executive report, which is the Vice President of Education. Steph, you can start it whenever. Steph, if you're speaking, yeah, okay, perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Sorry, the desktop computer in the office is refusing to let me access things, and also my Jerome isn't working, so that's a whole other thing. I try and be very thorough in my report, so hopefully anything that I would have said now is already outlined in the report. Anything that's highlighted is sort of actionables for counselors or at-large students, generally just opportunities to get involved, any particular questions that I have. So when you're reading the report, just look for things that are highlighted yellow if you're only taking a cursory overview of it. I guess any questions or concerns students have, if you could just let me know. Sorry, I just managed to get my my report open now.
No worries. Anyone has any questions for the VPAD report? Going once, going twice. I guess we can move on to the VPSOL report. I like these quick report, folks.
Hi, I just want to make sure you can hear. Oh, I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Similar to Steph, I am experiencing some technical difficulties. So you guys are on my computer screen and your sounds are in my phone. I tried to be pretty thorough in my report as well. I like to give counselors the opportunity to read them over and think of any questions before we get to council. And it's always nice for posterity's sake so that people can go back and see everything I've been up to. Committees have been meeting as normal. We've been doing services review stuff. Been just having meetings with whoever. I did, anticipating questions about this, I did also want to be a little proactive about addressing the temporary closure of the bike center. Basically, I would like to be as open about things as I can, but I can't really currently comment on specific rumors that are out there, and we are awaiting some sort of legal advice on what can and can't be public, just to respect individuals involved. As somebody who wasn't part of the original decision but later briefed on it, I do have a lot of trust and faith in the decision-making process of people who were involved. The bike center is currently being planned to be reopened in spring because, you know, bikes in winter, not really a thing. But we're going to be taking the time to basically figure out what went wrong and try to improve how we're able to provide that service in the future. But the bike center will be back. That's
Thank you,
basically
Vice
all there
President
is.
Dong. Does anyone have any questions for the VPSOL report? Going once. Going twice, I guess. No. Okay, we can move on to the caucus reports. And I guess the first report is the Arts Caucus. Oh, sorry. We have the Board of Director reports. My mistake. Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you can't just forget about me like that. But good morning, Council. I don't have anything to add in addition to my report. You'll see that I also included what I added in my oral report, the August meeting, just to make sure that you all had an opportunity to see that in writing as well. I don't know if there are any questions for me, but I am happy to take questions.
Anyone has any questions for the chair? Again, going once, going twice. Okay, moving on to representative reports. We can start with the Arts Caucus. Do you have someone from the Arts Caucus here?
Yep, you do. Hi. So for Arts Caucus, we're working on revamping on our social media. So I was working on that yesterday. And basically the last step we have is to get a contact from Musa to re-access the materials that we created last year. I wasn't one of the people that had access to those materials, and I can't contact the person who did anymore. So I'm just waiting for a contact email from that, and then we should be up and running. And I'll make sure to give you guys the information for that at the next meeting, and would appreciate your help in promoting the page. And that's pretty much it as far as I know.
Perfect. Is there anyone else from the Art Caucus that would like to speak?
If I could just speak to the report. Thanks, Rebecca. I have received your email. I'm going to follow up with our marketing and communication staff to get you set up with some social media stuff. And I feel like there might be some, like historical, like guidance documents about how to do brand stuff. So yeah, we'll get back to you about that.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a quick reply, so I really appreciate that.
Perfect. We can move on to the Engineering Caucus. Ben, go ahead again.
It was Steph had a point in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steph.
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to ask Arts if there was any, I guess, concerns or things that you've heard from your students that you would like to get on the exec's radar. If you don't, or it's related to questions, I guess, discussion items later, that's fine. But just for you, but also for all the other folks who are going to speak and give reports in a little bit, if there is anything that you're hearing from students that you want to flag for us to act on, please do so during your reports.
Yeah, so to answer your question, none here. I'm not sure about any of the arts counselors that are also here. No one has reached out to me, and our social media has not really been up and running. So those are kind of the only two ways to reach out to us. So we're working on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's move on to the engineering caucus. Do we have someone from engineering?
Hi, yes, this is Francis speaking. Yeah, just wanted to say that, the engineering caucus is really looking forward to another term and looking to embrace all of the transitions that come up during this year with, things changing and things being uncertain. And in follow-up to the discussion we were having earlier, we are really looking to put more effort into finding out how our caucus perceives governance and how to get more involvement in that, as always. But yeah, always wanting to explore more ways for that.
Anyone else? Anyone has any question for the engineering caucus report? Seems like not. Okay, moving on to the environment caucus. Do we have any environment council that would like to give their report?
Yeah, I'll give a report. So yeah, there's nothing too much to report. We're just looking forward to starting a new term, and yeah, that's about it.
I'm hoping no one has any questions on this report, and we can move on to Math Caucus report. Who would like to speak on behalf of Math Caucus? I guess if no one wants to, I will. Things have been going all right in math so far. We have just approved, MathSoc just approved their budget for the term. We're looking forward to having some in-person events, hopefully, from our clubs and MathSoc, and just hoping for a good fall term. Any questions for Math Caucus report? Okay, no, moving on. We can go to the Health Caucus.
Hi, this is Marie from the Health Caucus. This term, our student society is looking to reopen some indoor spaces in the HES building, so that's very exciting. And we also have a new elected counselor, and she can introduce herself.
Hi, this is Amelia. I know I introduced myself a little bit in August, but I'm back. I'm really excited to start working this term and seeing all of the changes from WUSA and seeing the reopening of spaces in the AHS building.
Does anyone have any question for the Health Caucus? Seeing none, we can move to the Science Caucus.
Hi everyone. So there isn't too much going on in science either. Since the term just started, SciSoc is also just working on their budget, and so are all of the other clubs. They're hoping to confirm all of the regulations and rules regarding in-person events, and they're planning accordingly. And yeah, I believe there would be more of an update about that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to, anyone has any questions for the Science Caucus? Nope. Okay, let's move to the Cambridge Caucus. Do we have a representative from Cambridge here? Seems like not. Okay, we can move on to the Kitchener Caucus. Do we have anyone from Kitchener campus? Nope. Okay, moving on to Stratford.
Hello.
Hello.
Can people hear
Yeah.
me? Cool. Hello, I'm Tyson of GBA Society. Again, not much going on our end. We're just happy to be getting started and just implementing both in-person sort of events, but also still catering to the online population that still is online. And yeah, and also if we just would really like to advocate if there's anything going on main campus or anything that needs help promoting in terms of just kind of events on the main campus, please send it our way so we can also share it with our Stratford cohort, because we would love to be involved with the main campus events.
Thank you, Stratford. Does anyone have any questions for the Stratford campus? Mike, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, Tyson. I've seen that a lot of GBDA students have already opted into the bus pass, but if any Waterloo region living GBDA students wanted to opt into the GRT UPass, that is something they can do. It is not something that is charged to them by default, but second years and above are able to opt in. So they can just go to the turnkey desk for that whenever they find themselves on campus. That is my little pitch, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mike. Moving on to St. Jerome's Caucus.
Good morning. There's nothing to report for this month.
Perfect. Moving to Renson College, sorry.
Hello, everyone. There's not too much to report, except hopefully, I guess on the administrative side, there are going to be interviews for the new VPAD, and there's going to be hopefully some in-person events held with RASC and still online because of COVID, but that's all.
Perfect. Any questions for the Renson Caucus? Seeing none, I guess we will move on to the Officers of Council report. Speaker, take it away.
Thanks, Ken. Steph actually put a point in the chat, so.
Sorry, Steph, go ahead. I keep missing you, Steph.
Do you just have me blocked or something? Do we need to talk about this? Offline then, I guess. Yeah, what's a VPAD?
Oh, sorry, it's the Vice President Academic Team of Renison. It's like they handle like the academic side, like all the courses and prof and students. It's just like under the president role.
Okay, so like for Renison itself, like a full-time staff member type person and not like a student elected role?
That's right. It's a full-time staff member. They have to have like PhD. They have to have like lots of experience with managing students and staff. It's been going for a while. The previous one has stepped down, or like the previous one contract had came out at the end of his contract in April and accepted another position. So it's just been ongoing to find a new one. There is an interim one right now.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Vicky and Steph. So for the report of the speaker, I thought I would share our document that I shared with Council First back in May about sort of meeting etiquette, just as we get back into fall. Thought it would be anyway, good idea. So council is a professional setting, so treat the assembly, its members and guests with respect. This means always acting in good faith. And we always assume that everybody here wants the best outcome for students, even if we disagree about the vision for how we get there. So we have this piece on the chat function, but I know, Kenan, you're having some difficulty as speaker. So
I have opened the chat on my phone separately,
okay.
So that should be fine.
Okay, so then we'll go through the rules for chat. So it's only to be used for requesting speaking turns by entering a 1, requesting a direct response by entering a 2, raising points of order, privilege, or inquiry using like the codes here. And violating these rules may result in your removal from the meeting, just for expediency of like for us to administer the meeting. I just sent that, although it looks like it's very ugly looking, like blue on black. I'll try to figure that out and paste this again for everybody to read in the chat. But then on speaking rights, just in case we get into any sort of prolonged debate, which I'm not sure if that'll happen this meeting. 1 second. So each member of council is entitled to 4 turns of debate on each motion. The first turn may be no longer than 4 minutes. Any subsequent turn no longer than 2 minutes. Members at large are permitted to debate on a motion or participate in discussion upon recognition by the speaker or by volunteering, by yielding time by a member of council. Thanks, Mike. I will control shift B. Oh, what the? Okay. Anyway, I'll stop sharing my screen, and yeah, that's all. Just a little reminder on etiquette.
Okay, I guess we will to the deputy speaker report. That's me. Update in general about my life. I'm in India right now, so the time zones are a bit difficult for me to manage. So it's taken some usage, but hopefully by the next council meeting, I will have the attendance records all sorted out with the secretary, and we can see that people are attending council as they're supposed to or not. That's all I have. Matthew, do you have any report, or Mike, would you like to speak on behalf of the secretary?
I don't have anything to say as corporate secretary, no, although I'd invite the recording secretaries to say anything if there's anything they'd like to say.
There have not been a draft set of July minutes yet, so I'll make sure that those are done before next meeting.
Thank you, Matthew and Mike. Moving on. I guess we have standing committees or commissioner reports. Is there any committee or commissioner that would like to give a report? I don't see anything on the agenda, but I'll just wait for a minute, for like 10 seconds to see. Seems like not. Okay, business arising from minutes. We have one. Amendment to policy 47, gender-based and sexual violence prevention and response. Submitted by Vice President Guimel. And can I have a seconder for this motion, please? President Easton seconds. Take it away, Vice President Emo.
Hi there. So this was actually a project that was started last year by my predecessor, Megan Town. If you look at the current version of the policy that I guess is the approved one on the WUSA website, you'll see that it's only like 5 sentences long. It's incredibly vague, and if we want to do stuff to address, I guess, be supportive of survivors of sexual assault and other traumatic experiences, we have to be a lot more intentional and targeted in what we're asking from the university, from the province, from other stakeholders as well. So the resulting sort of recommendations arise out of sort of conversations that we had with at-large students, conversations that we had with the services, as well, particularly the services that are more likely to sort of interface and be in supportive positions with students sort of in these circumstances. So I'm hoping that we cover a lot of bases here. We also drew some things from the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance paper, of which we were a part of sort of developing and creating. So there's, I some research and some evidence in that as well. I also just wanted to thank Councillor Amelia for all her work basically compiling this stuff as well. But I really hope that we are able to approve this, because then it'll leave, this will probably go to the AVP equity, but well positioned in order to begin having these conversations with the university, especially in light of recent events that have happened at Western. We very much feel as if the climate is receptive to addressing a lot of these concerns, and we want to get ahead of it. Even though Waterloo hasn't been in the news for this recently, does not mean this hasn't happened in the past, doesn't mean that this isn't still happening. So this is, I guess, one step forward in order to be addressing a lot of issues that exist. That was the end of my thing.
Vice President Emo, does any councillor have anything that they would like to speak on this? Go ahead, Vincent, with your POI.
Yeah, I'm wondering, usually when we have amendments to policies, we get a version that shows the differences, but I don't see the differences between like what is being changed by this amendment. Like, I just see the full policy.
I will put in the chat a link to the previous policy. Give me a moment.
Could you also just summarize what the main differences are?
So the previous policy was literally like 5 lines long. It just said something along the lines of the university should care about students. And I can go to the sexual violence prevention office and say care about students, but like, what does that do? Like, that isn't giving them any actionable steps. So it's really the new policy is just a lot more sort of targeted. Sort of talks about specific concerns that students has, draws upon sort of evidence that we can reference to the university to argue that this is a systemic problem that really warrants addressing. So I would say it just provides specificity and evidence. It's very much kind of an overhaul of what we originally had, which I felt was more of like I don't know, a very high level, broad, this would be nice to see, but like is not actionable and wouldn't be able to invoke any change.
President Easton, you have a direct response?
Thanks, Cannon. I'm just going to send in chat the existing policy. So it's 5 points. Councilors can read that there. So yeah, as Steph indicated, the policy amendment proposed is a pretty substantial overhaul, to say the least. it more than triples its length of the policy.
Thank you, President Easton. I'll give everyone 30 seconds to read through this, if they would like, and then meanwhile, if anyone has any other questions or comments on the policy, feel free to put one in the chat. Also, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, this needs a 2/3 approval, right? Because it's an amendment to a policy.
My understanding is that that is for procedural amendments. I guess you can make that ruling if you want me to get out Robert's rules. I think it's more for like standing orders, like which would be our procedures. I don't know if policy amendments require a supermajority. Off the top of my head.
We require a 2/3 majority if you're passing a new policy in a first reading. I know that much. And a normal if you're passing it in 2 readings. So I'm assuming this we could. Stephanie, you can go ahead. Tell then. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to explain that the first reading of this proposed policy amendment came out, I believe, in January. But it was requested by council that EAC have a look at it, and that we seek out some advice from the services as well. So essentially the resulting thing is like, this is essentially a second reading.
Okay, perfect.
And sorry, and also just wanted to add that, to my understanding, everything that was listed in the original policy is still maintained, albeit potentially reworded. But essentially, we've just expanded on things. We haven't changed any of our, I guess, initial sort of stances. Those are still present in the policy.
Thank you. VP email. President Easton, go ahead with the direct response.
Yeah, you're right, Canon. It does require 2/3 to amend.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or comments they would like to bring up on this item? Going once, going twice, I guess. Moving on to vote. Is anyone against this motion? Type against in the chat. If you're abstaining, type abstain in the chat. I'll wait. Like, seems like the motion passes unanimously. Perfect. Moving on to general orders. As a reminder to everyone present, we have moved 6.2 to be 6.1, so we'll be moving on to amendment and interpretation of Procedure 25, Federation Services. This entire motion has been submitted, I believe, by Vice President Dong. I will let them speak to this motion after I have a seconder. Can I have a seconder? President Easton seconds. Okay, Vice President Dong, take it away.
To clarify, am I speaking to 6.2 as an overall item or just 6.2.1?
Whatever you feel like doing.
I mean, when you say that I guess what does the agenda dictate that we are doing right now?
Well, I guess it says 6.2.1, so we can go with that.
Sure. I'm not sure if counselors had the opportunity to look at the memo that I sent out a few days ago in advance of the meeting. The goal of that was sort of to basically disseminate my rationale in advance so that because I've been thinking about all this for a while and I wanted to basically let counselors know what I was thinking about before going into the meeting so that they could like formulate questions and not have to try to do so on the spot, basically. The overall rationale here is that if you look at the Council Procedure 25, there are 3 acceptable reasons for removal of a service as a whole. And one of them is that, hold on, let me pull up the exact wording. I've been like clicking around in my email and I keep on not clicking the right buttons. So one of the valid acceptable reasons is that a different component of the Federation can part of the mandate can be taken on by another area of the organization while maintaining the mandate at the same or higher standard than the service was able to. And my interpretation of that is that it doesn't have to apply to the entire services mandate, but individual components of the services mandate. And the component of the services mandate that I'm looking to strike from the mandate is to advocate on behalf of international and exchange students to the university administration on topics including but not limited to student fees, orientation improvement, improved and expanded services, and leadership opportunities on campus. And basically my rationale here is I've been able to identify existing committees in the organization, existing staff supports, and I've been able to point to existing advocacy priorities within the organization as well as in affiliated organizations like the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, USA, as well as the Undergraduates of Research Intensive Canadian Universities, which is UCRU, which we are part of, we have elected portfolios such as in the VPAD portfolio that also have international and exchange student advocacy, as well as existing part-time staff and potentially full-time staff. So basically, what I'm saying is that we've successfully had this component of the mandate supported very well, at least at the same level and maybe higher than it would otherwise be in the service. So my proposal is that we take this off of ICSN's plate basically and give them the opportunity to focus on other things that other components of the organization and the university are not doing.
Thank you, Vice President Dunk. Does anyone have any comments, concerns, discussions, type?
Cannon, you're kind of cutting out a little.
Sorry, can
let
you
me
hear
know
me now?
if you want me to, if it gets too bad, let me know and I can take over. But yeah, Jay.
Okay, thank you. First of all, my last name is Lan. If you can correct that for the speaking order. Thank you. I feel like it's unnecessary to remove that because the WUSA mandate and this club or services mandates, they do not conflict to each other. And I feel like both these three services list in the agenda is more like a club, and they act on behalf of students. So if they can react as an independent club to do the advocacy, and also like I know it's like all these 3 points are a priority for WUSA right now, but like maybe in the future WUSA feel like they don't want to do that, they remove such advocacies, then there's no place to do these things. Because if we removed these 3 mandates from these services today.
Thank you, Councillor Lan. Councillor Macri, direct response to Councillor Lan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to disagree respectfully with the councillor's characterization that services are similar to clubs. Services are a lot larger, use a lot more of WUSA's resources, and cost a lot more money for WUSA to run than clubs. And I think it's important that WUSA is responsible with how we spend students' money, how we use our resources, and WUSA does not have infinite money. And so I don't think it is appropriate for us to be, having 2 organizations working on the same thing. It seems like an inefficient use of students' money and a waste of our resources. If now there's nothing here that would prevent students from starting a club if they think that they need a dedicated club for advocating for their interests. There are many clubs under WUSA that do something like that advocate for specific issues, and they don't take up the large amount of resources that an entire service does.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. VP Dong, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to similarly clarify the distinction between clubs and services. Clubs are groups of students, and we basically provide support to those groups in the interest of fostering campus life. So we provide a small amount of financial support on a reimbursement basis. We provide access to being able to book spaces and have lockers on campus and marketing and event planning supports. But it's specifically outlined that clubs are not an agent or representative of the Federation of Students, which is WUSA, and that its views and actions in no way represent the Federation of Students. On the other hand, services essentially do. They're a large component of our budget, as Vincent mentioned, and they are run by volunteers of WUSA and staff members of WUSA. So it's a little bit different of a dynamic, basically. Services are here to be accessed by all students, and we administrate them as an organization so that they can be accessed by all students. And the other part of what Vincent was saying, I also broadly agree, and that's a lot of why I'm bringing this motion to council, which is that international students and exchange students are part of our student body, and in fact, a large part of our student body. And it is advocacy that we are perpetually working on. But ICSN, the rest of ICSN's mandate is very special, I guess. It has to do with giving international and exchange students opportunities to socialize and get to interact more with Canadian cultures and get to explore things in a social way, which I think is really incredibly important. And it's something that we've identified multiple times now, is something that is not fulfilled by the university or by any other part of WUSA. So it is a unique mandate in those components, but advocacy is not a unique mandate because the organization as a whole, and in particular areas that I've identified in the memo that I sent out, I can list them as well. So I was able to identify international students as an explicit advocacy priority in the long-range plan, which extends to 2025, our membership in USA and UCRU, Students' Council, and the Education Advisory Council, which both inform executive advocacy, have very consistently seen a large amount of both direct representation of international and exchange students, but more importantly, consistently seen a lot of really engaging discussion around the needs of international students. I don't think there's been a single council meeting that I've ever attended where we don't explicitly speak about the needs of international students, and I think that that's really cool and speaks to the fact that this component of the mandate is not unique. It's being duplicated. And if it's being duplicated, that means that we have the opportunity here to take it off of the plate of a group of really dedicated volunteers instead, and let them focus on other things that are not being duplicated.
Thank you, Vice President Dong. Vice President Emo.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak on.
Sorry, Vice President Emo, just a second. We have a POI from Councillor Dan, which is our representatives from the services here today. I have seen a bunch of services joining the call. I'm not sure exactly which services are on, but we do have services here. Continue on with your point, VP Emo.
Okay. Yeah, so someone whose, I guess, portfolio who forms the advocacy related to international exchange students as well as co-op students. I'll say that the removal of advocacy from underneath their mandate doesn't preclude them from talking to administration, sending emails. As someone with lived experiences from those groups, and also folks who talk to international students or co-op students, they're still stakeholders. They can still like choose to engage with different decision makers. I think it's just though that when things sort of officially come from WUSA, that I am made aware of it. Because it's very difficult for me, who's in charge of advocacy, of everything that WUSA does. Like, advocacy needs to be strategic in order to be taken seriously. We very much need to show that we understand sort of the limitations and what we ask is actually feasible. That's a huge part of what has made WUSA advocacy so successful in the past, what has made WUSA and UCRU advocacy impactful as well. And I'll say that, like, if students within the services, particularly these two services, I guess I can speak to, if they want to get involved, or if they want to put problems, they want us to be taking action on certain things, like all they
really need to do is talk to me. If they want to be the ones who are championing certain actions, like they can represent WUSA. I can empower them to do so, but this is very much just a way to make sure that I know what's going on. It's very, I guess, frustrating when I'm trying to negotiate something with co-op and then I find out that, some other end of WUSA has been, asking for something completely different. It makes my advocacy less sort of impactful. And, I definitely do understand people wanting to get involved in that work. But as someone who's in charge of coordinating all sort of the acts that happen, I need to be able to decide whether or not this is coming from WUSA specifically or whether or not it's coming from another student group. I have no intention to stop anyone from asking the university for anything or expressing their opinions, but I do need to know what's up to do my job properly.
Thank you, VP Emo. Councillor Macri has a direct response. Go ahead, Councillor Macri.
I just wanted to, I guess, echo what Steph was saying. I think it's really important that the people who are speaking on behalf of WUSA and speaking for what students, like as a student body, rather than just as individuals want, I think it's really important that those people are elected and directly accountable to students. And at least with the way our services currently operate, it's not the case that the people who run services are elected by students. And so I think this has caused issues in the past where students have been upset that sometimes services who are not accountable to students have in the past done things that students don't agree with. And I think it's important that when we're talking about doing advocacy, that it is students elected representatives who are deciding how to move forward on it. And then we can have the people that WUSA employs, our staff, volunteers, part-time staff, everyone working together on what has been decided by the elected members of the student society.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. Next, we have the GLOW representative, sponsored by President Easton. Before you start, can you just give state your full name so the secretary knows who's speaking on behalf of GLOW?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Midas. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the coordinators for the GLOW Center. I have a couple of concerns just with a general topic of this proposal. I understand that for some services like co-op connections, it makes sense to separate the advocacy from those services, but that's not the case with equity services. That would be us, Women's Center, and Race. I want to clarify something about budget. None of us receive any specific line of budget for advocacy. That advocacy work that we do is completely done by a student volunteer who received the exact appreciation gift.
Sorry, Midas, sorry to interrupt. There's a point of order which takes precedence over anyone who's speaking. It's basically something that's going out of order. Go ahead, Councillor Macri.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I'm following where we are. We are talking about item 6.2.1 right now. It sounds like the GLOW representative is talking about 6.2.3.
That is true. Midas, would you mind if you continue your point then?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yep, no worries. Next, we have Vice President Schwartz. Go ahead, Vice President Schwartz.
Actually, I think everyone else has spoken pretty well to my beliefs. I don't think I have anything to say other than I think I endorse 6.2.1 in particular, but I'll withdraw my point.
Thank you, Vice President Schwartz. This is a question, I guess, for the Assembly in terms of how we want to approve all these motions. Do we just want to vote together in the end, or do we want to vote for
I
each
think you have a point of order,
6.2.
Cannon.
Sorry, yes, Stephanie, go ahead.
Maybe that wasn't the right way to do things, but I would say that item, I guess it's 6.1.1 and 6.1.2 now, are like, by making decisions on them, they're setting precedent for the latter motion, for which I think Midas has concerns about. So I think it would be warranted to let the services discuss that in advance to making the decision for 6.1.1. I don't know if we can have that reflected in terms of the agenda or how we speak on it, but I disagree with Councillor Macary's assertion that it was not on topic.
Thank you, VP Imo. President Easton, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, just to clarify, I intended that these motions all be considered as a single item. The subheadings for 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 was more just to separate that the resolutions and the whereas clauses are speaking to different things. But I agree with sort of what with what Steph has just said, that it does make sense to consider these as a single item, and I would suggest that we return to Midas's speaking turn. Just in general, like, I know we're getting very legalese about this, but like, we should try to be facilitating people to come together and talk about this. So my suggestion to Cannon, I guess, is to enforce the rules of order, but with the end of having as many people speak to the item as want to, and as it's relevant to, to the benefit of all of council to discuss it.
Thank you, President Easton. I'll take that in note. Midas will go back to you right after we go through VP Dong's direct response to me, and then, yes, go ahead, VP Dong.
Yeah, you just asked a question about how the Assembly would like to consider the items. I would appreciate if we could have 6.2.1 and 6.2.2. I'm okay with those being batched, but I'd appreciate if we could have 6.2.3 as a separate item, because I think that the two, I guess, like, groups of items are quite different. Two of them are procedure changes that have to do with amending mandates, and then the last one is an interpretation of existing mandates. So I'd appreciate if those.
Yep. Midas, we can go back to you. Sorry about all this issue. It's been a while since I've run. Well, I've never run a WUSA council meeting, so bear with me. But yeah, you can go ahead, Midas.
No worries. Yeah, my understanding was that we are talking about the whole memo that was sent to us. Talk about the budget. The next thing that I was going to mention is that even though advocacy is not in, like, the word advocacy is not in the mandate for GLOW Center and Women's Center, it is kind of implied. GLOW, the third mandate of GLOW, is educating the campus and making sure that we are taking steps. I would consider that as an implied advocacy, and if it's just a matter of like wording, I can see that like it can easily just change to educating and advocating. Another point is about the when it makes sense to actually like implies this changes. VP Student Life mentioned that when university or another part of organization are able to do that job as good or better than the services. In case of the equity services, we've seen a lot of the time that when the advocacy projects that we define based on our connection with our student body, something that I doubt a separate advocacy section is going to have access to, because these connections were built over time based on trust and the relationship that we have with student body. when we bring those projects to WUSA, we see some sort of progress when it's just us working with equity office, working with those services and parts of university directly. But when WUSA comes in and they take over the projects that we defined, we kind of just go back to the first step. And it's not that like we are both working on same thing in different ways, is that WUSA takes over our projects, move on with it, and does not update us on what is actually happening. Or they do update us, but it's not like enough. It's an update, like our problem goes to those meetings and it gets discussed and we just get updates instead of us actually having a sit on those meetings and voicing our concerns. So I don't see that happening personally. I see this like a separate advocacy section for the equity services to be just limiting what we can do, because we can talk about not be homophobic, not be transphobic, but if you're taking away our advocacy from our mandate and what is part of our work scope, then you're taking our ability to actually do something about our problems. I had one more points, but I don't recall it. I think that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you, Midas, for speaking. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue?
Sorry, can I just quickly
go ahead.
add something? There was also a mention that advocacy directors' scope of work changes depending on like which service they're working up for, and a lot of the times they're doing the work that it's not cannot technically be called advocacy. That's because we are understaffed, and as a team we work together, so a lot of the time people have to step up and help with other things that is not technically part of their scope. We see that coordinators take over exact position. We see that exact position do 2 or 3 positions at the time because we don't have enough people. Like that's not a choice.
Yep. VP Emo, you have a direct response?
Yeah. Bear with me here because this will be a little bit of thinking out loud. I just want to say, like, I sympathize with where you're coming from, Midas. I do think that it's very empowering for students to be engaged in advocacy and to be supporting students, and sitting there and being aware of problems and being told to sit there and wait on someone else to do it can be, I guess, incredibly frustrating. I guess I would challenge you to, I guess, sort of think from our perspective. What happens a lot of time is that like council and the executive do need like more communication from what the services are doing with regards to advocacy, to make sure that it's going in a direction that the students that you're supposed to represent. So in your case particularly, LGBTQ+ students. Like there needs to be some more like communication there, and like what has sort of happened in the past is that LO has gone to stakeholders, had conversations that we weren't aware about, that has made things sort of frustrating. Sorry, and I'll also say that there are different, I guess, sorts of advocacy. So this might be a conversation for later. I'm getting like really into like the theory of advocacy, but there's advocacy in the sense of, I guess, like protests, mobilizing people, getting them to care about the issue, and then there's sort of meetings with stakeholders and politicking and all that sort of jazz, and they're very sort of different things. And this is just me thinking out loud again, but it might
there might be an opportunity to sort of scope out what advocacy looks like for the services to make sure that sort of USA Central's efforts and the services efforts are not sort of in contention or in conflict with one another. Sorry if that was a little bit randomly, but yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand both concerns and find a way to reconcile them, and you're just ending up with me talking out loud. But again, thank you very much for sharing. I know that it's difficult to speak at these things, and you have done a great job, so thanks.
Thank you, VP Emo. We have a direct response from Midas. Midas, go ahead.
Yeah, honestly, I find this frustrating that WUSA first step is to take away something from the services and organize it the way they wanted to do it. And then when that fails, and we saw that failing with WUSA marketing and our marketing director, they keep going and move forward with the same pattern. I understand that WUSA wants to take over more advocacy project. WUSA wants to be more accountable for the needs of the student, but why is the suggestion taking away part of our power? If you want to do that, just support the services. Hire the advocacy director the same way coordinators are hired for 2 terms. They can work with one of the VPs or someone else that was elected for advocacy, not to be looked over, but to get to have those connections to be at those meetings and lead those advocacy projects or campaigns. So these volunteers are the people who already are doing this work. They have the experience, they have the passion to do this work, even though they're not getting paid. Then I just don't understand why this is such a hard thing to do, and the solution is to just change everything.
Thank you, Midas. We have VP Dong as a direct response. Go ahead, VP Dong.
I'd like to clarify again the distinction between services and any other body on campus, really. I by no means have ever wanted to take away the voices and the power to speak of individual students or clubs or less organized groups of students, anything. But what's really tricky here is that services are in a really complicated and nuanced position in the organization, which is to say that services are part of the organization and are agents of the organization and represent the organization in any rooms that they're in. And you run into this problem where volunteers in services and staff in services are not accountable to public elected bodies the same way that executives and committees are. And so it's really difficult to be able to organize advocacy that is being endorsed by the student dollar when students aren't able to have oversight over it the same way as other advocacy that the organization has. As counselors and as executives, we are in a sense public figures, and coordinators in a sense are slightly more so as well. Your names are on our website as staff, which is still a slightly different dynamic than elected student representatives. But especially once you get into the place of volunteers, I'd like to protect their volunteers, honestly. They don't sign up to be public figures like counselors do, who are also volunteers. So I think it's unfair to ask for the same type of really robust oversight and accountability. And at the same time, I think about students who, you know, have that lived experience and maybe don't agree with, you know, what the stances that are being taken in conversations that a service volunteer could be having with the university or whatever department of the university. But there's such little power to have a voice heard against that, right? Because the word of a service, in a sense, is the word of WUSA, because they're staffed by WUSA staff, and they are funded by WUSA's budget directly through student fees in a way that nothing else is. So once you have non-elected volunteers doing advocacy, it just I really do believe that it stops working. It breaks the system, honestly. And so that's a lot of where I'm coming from with this. It's meant to come from a place of really good intention of basically giving students the opportunity to know what's being said on behalf of them. Because from what I've seen, that's not how it works right now.
Thank you, VP Dong. I'm gonna let Midas speak before I let you do a direct response, Vincent, because I believe it's in the same tone of conversation that's happening right now. So Midas, go ahead. Also, sorry, is it Midas or Midas? Let me know so I can just pronounce it right.
Both are fine. If you can pronounce Midas, it's Midas. Midas is fine. I agree, Catherine. The volunteers are not responsible to talk publicly, and they're not there to be held accountable. But at the end of the day, the volunteers are the people who are going to be sitting here providing peer support for the people who are getting harmed inside of university. And we prefer to be able to say that, oh, you had a bad experience with health services. I had this 2 meeting with health services in the past 2 months. I'm going to talk with them in the next week. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make sure that things are going to change, rather than just saying, oh, that's awful. I have the same experience. Let's hope that WUSA will move forward, or the new advocacy task force or whatever are going to move forward with a correct understanding of what we were asking. So basically just taking our word and moving forward with whatever they're comfortable with, rather than actually letting us talk about our problems. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I want to be able to say that I will do something about this horrible experience that you're having.
Thank you, Midas. Sorry again if I mispronounced it, I know. Go ahead, Councillor Macri.
So it sounds to me like the problem here is the equity services find that, you know, WUSA, I guess central WUSA, isn't doing as good a job as they'd like us to do. But on the other hand, the larger student body is having an issue with unelected people deciding what to advocate for. So I was wondering if it's in your perspective as a representative of one of the services, and I guess this question will also go to Steph, VPAD, would you be open to, I guess, and since we've been talking about governance changes coming up, be open to restructuring how we operate here, have the service coordinators be elected, and have WUSA Central generally be hands-off on the portfolios covered by the equity services unless they ask us to take on certain items?
Does anyone want to respond to that? I will let Midas go first, and then we'll go to Benjamin. and then we'll see if there are any more direct responses.
I just want to like briefly say that at least for Glow, we don't want WUSA to be hands off. We want WUSA to actually support us.
If I can.
Vincent will let Ben directly respond first.
I'll just say like the service coordinators are ratified by council, so there is like some aspect of like a mandate, but I think like Vincent, you are onto something about like that the services identify needs in like the way that the services work, being more in touch with their, the communities that they work for, like can be responsive in a way that, WUSA proper for whatever that means, meaning like I guess the executive and students council and our governance often struggle to be. And I think that there is a way forward where we can like, but I guess I understand like Catherine's suggestion about like coordination of advocacy work and like who gets to claim to represent WUSA, but like there are advantages to the fact that like the equity seeking services are in touch with their communities and identify needs through their peer support and like implicit advocacy that kind of comes out of that. But and maybe there is a way forward like that can deal with both of those at the same time. Yeah, anyway.
Thank you. Next we have Vincent, clarify your thing.
Yeah, I guess when I was saying like have WUSA be hands off, I didn't really mean like WUSA not do anything, but I meant more if the coordinators are elected, then I think they have a mandate to set advocacy goals on the things that are covered by their portfolio. So then in that case, we wouldn't have WUSA Council making advocacy decisions, although the VPAD would still be supporting them in their advocacy. I guess I'm more asking, if would you be open to having the service coordinators be elected, and I guess you would then be accountable to the whole student body, but also have more power to decide with less, I guess, interference from council on what you are advocating for.
I guess we have Stephanie next. Oh, sorry.
Let
Stephanie go. Yeah. Okay, Midas, go ahead.
It looks like yeah, looks like Midas hung up.
Okay. Steph, I guess you want to wait for a direct response for them to come back.
Yes.
Okay. We do have a point of personal privilege about taking our recess after all the ones are done, but seeing as the people we are conversing with are currently not able to join us, I am gonna take a privilege break of 5 minutes, and we will return. 6 minutes. We'll return at 11:40 a.m. Please be back at that time so we can continue this discussion. Till then, enjoy your break, folks. I'm assuming everyone is back, and I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 11:40 a.m. 11:41 a.m. Everyone got an extra 1 minute. Perfect. I see we have one in the chat from VP Dong. Go ahead, VP Dong.
We've been having what I think is a really valuable discussion. But I'd like to sort of bring back my focus to items 6. I'm going to keep calling them 6.2 and stuff because that's what it says on the live agenda. But 6.2.1 and 6.2.2, which have to do with amending the mandates of ICSN and co-op connection. I spoke to ICSN earlier about how our long-range plan and our membership in various organizations and our elected bodies, I strongly believe, take on the advocacy component of ICSN's mandate, at least as highly a standard at as ICSN. I'd also like to sort of bring about the piece of information that ICSN's first time having an advocacy director is this term. ICSN hasn't had an advocacy director before, so it's not really something that was being built in the first place. And then there's co-op connection as well. A lot of the same rationale applies there. You know, we are always talking about co-op students and their needs here, and at the Education Advisory Council as well. And the CE Students Council, which was previously the Co-op Student Council, is a standing committee that actively, like their whole role is to discuss the needs of co-op students. We also have, for several years now, we have like a dedicated part-time staff member that reports directly to the VP Education, that is hired by the VP Education and is an extension of them, the AVP Co-op and Experiential Affairs. And besides that, it's already a significant portion of the VP Education's portfolio. From my understanding, their priorities at USA with focuses toward the government, including access to jobs, supply of jobs, and wellness supports for students on co-op terms. So broadly, I think that it's reasonable to say that that the advocacy component of Co-op Connections mandate is very well fulfilled by other components of the organization. I heard from the coordinator of Co-op Connection. They reached out to ask me if it was okay if they just sent any concerns instead of attending the meetings, and I said, of course. And they took a look at the memo that I sent, and the message that I received back was, "Hey, Catherine, I pretty much agree with everything that you have mentioned in the PDF for the agenda tomorrow. It looks great." So that's where I'm coming from, I guess. And Co-op Connection also does not have an advocacy director. That is
Representative Aquino.
I might need President Easton for help with wording, but can I call the question or have this tabled for the VPs who need to be involved to go talk to especially GLOW and the GLOW and Women's Center, because I feel like there needs to be a lot more offline conversation about this. As it seems like there's a lot of issues going on that I think the VP Ed and maybe in the VP of Life, VP Student Life might need to go talk to GLOW and Wellness Service. So either call the question or I don't know, Ben.
Catherine, we have a point of order. Go ahead.
I believe that we're speaking to item 6.2.1 and 6.2.2, which are not affect the 3 defined equity seeking services. So I would ask that instead we call the question on these 2, and then I do intend to table 6.2.3 after discussion.
Thank you. President Easton, your response.
Thanks, Cannon. So at present, my understanding is that we are dealing with items 6.2.1 through 6.2.3 as a single item. I don't believe that we have voted to split the question. So to get to Representative Econo's point, if she did want to move to table the motion, I think is the spirit of to delay its consideration, then it'll be for the whole list of things, and it would require a second. So if somebody seconds to table consideration of all of the items, then we'll go to a vote on that, is my ruling. So Vicky moved that implicitly, but and it looks like maybe Angad wants to second.
Vicky, you moved to table the entirety of this motion, even 6.1, 6.2.1, and 6.2.2.
No, I was seconding to split the questions that Councillor Vincent wants to. So
Okay.
doing the call the question on the co-op and the international, and then table the GLOW and the advocacy part, if I'm understanding Vincent right.
So Vincent, Catherine, I'm gonna take Vincent's motion to split the question first. We have a motion to split the question, and we have moved by Councillor Macri, seconded by Representative Aikino. So basically what's happening right now for everyone in the assembly is right now all these motions are a single motion. We would have voted on them together, but we are splitting them into two separate motions where 6.2.1 and 6.2.2 would be a single motion, which is the motion about international and Canadian Student Network and the co-op connection. And then 6.2.3 would be a separate motion. So we have a motion on the floor. Anyone on council is against splitting the question, please type in the chat. We'll give everyone 5 seconds. Anyone abstaining from splitting the question? Motion passes unanimously. We have split the question, and now we are only considering right now 6.2.1 and 6.2.2. Catherine, you have one in the chat.
The one was intended for the motion to table the entire item, which has been withdrawn. I guess I'm in support of splitting the motion. I think that there are two distinct types of motions.
Sorry, Ben, can you take over for a minute? I'm losing connection.
Yep. Okay, so looking at the live minutes, it looks like we've successfully split the question, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so now we deal with the first question, which is items 6.2.1 and 6.2.2. So Vicky, would you like to speak to the resolutions on ICSN and co-op connection?
I just would I feel like we've had a lot of good discussions regarding that, and it seems like there's a lot of agreement of what's going on. So I would like to call the question for these amendments or these policy changes.
Okay. So since we've exhausted the speaking order, Vicky, I'll suggest that we just proceed to a vote instead of calling the question would require a second, and it might actually make it take a little longer. So we will go to a vote on items 6.2.1 and 6.2.2. And I'll read the motions and just note for the record, I guess, that I will be, by virtue of having taken the chair, I will be abstaining from these. The items originally were moved by Vice President Dong and seconded by myself, and we can retain those. Okay, I'll read the motions. Whereas advocacy in the interest of international and exchange students is an existing priority of WUSA and its representative bodies and officers, and whereas the following has been endorsed by the Campus Life Advisory Committee of Students' Council, then be it resolved that Council Procedure 25, Federation Services, Part C, List of Federation Services, Item 6, the International and Canadian Student Network, is amended to strike the following component of the ICSN mandate. 2, this is a quote of the portion to be struck, removed from the procedure. Advocate on behalf of international and exchange students to the university administration on topics including, but not limited to, student fees, orientation improvements, improved and expanded services, and leadership opportunities on campus. That's one motion. I will continue reading because we're voting on these together. Second part. Whereas advocacy in the interest of co-op students is an existing priority of WUSA and its representative bodies and officers, and whereas the following has been endorsed by the Campus Life Advisory Committee of Students' Council, then be it resolved that Council Procedure 25, Federation Services, Part C, List of Federation Services, Items 8, co-op connection is amended to strike the following component of the co-op connection mandate. Quote, 3, better understand the unique needs and advocate for necessary change on behalf of co-op students. This was moved by Vice President Dong, seconded by myself. So this will come to a vote. To amend procedure requires a 2/3 supermajority. So we will take those who oppose to indicate so either, preferably in the chat. If you don't have access to the chat, raise your hand or you can unmute and say it aloud, but those opposed. Okay, seeing none, we move, those abstaining from the vote. I'll note for the record my abstention. Then that carries, I don't know if it's unanimous if I abstained, but carries. Motion carries. We move to item 6.2.3, procedure interpretation and services advocacy. Whereas, and Catherine's noted in favor of items, of the items just passed. So I'll read the motion for the second part of the question we've split. Whereas, so the title is Procedure, Interpretation, and Services Advocacy. Whereas advocacy in the interest of students is an existing priority of WUSA and its representative bodies and officers, and whereas the mandates of Federation services are established and subject to change by Students' Council, and whereas the following has been endorsed by the Campus Life Advisory Committee of Students' Council, then be it resolved that Federation services whose mandates do not explicitly identify advocacy in their purpose, as outlined in Council Procedure 25, Federation services, shall not make advocacy a part of their standard structures and operations. So this is has been moved by Vice President Dong and seconded by myself previously. Does anybody wish to speak to this motion?
Ben, I'm back. If you want to continue chairing, you can. Otherwise, I can take over.
Let's, just for the sake of continuity, I'll give it back at the next item, if that works. Okay. Catherine.
Yeah, I guess at first just note my intentions at this meeting, which are I would like to table a decision on this motion to next meeting, and then also ask council to consider a motion to delay the hiring of positions that would be affected by a decision on this motion, should it pass next council meeting. Speaker, if I could just get a confirmation on whether I should do that now or after I talk, because I'd still like to have conversation on this item.
Okay, so those are two separate questions. So the way that I would do this is you've moved to table consideration of item 6.2.3 to the October meeting of Students' Council. So
Would we
you
still
so
have
move.
discussion?
You can okay, then what I'm suggesting we do is like you move to table, then there will be a motion to discuss delaying hiring, and maybe in the delaying hiring motion, which would be a separate thing, we can continue the discussion.
Okay. In that case, in that case, I'd like to move to table a decision on this motion to the October council meeting.
Okay.
Or rather, I'd prefer if I could motion the other thing first.
Okay.
Can I withdraw my motion?
Okay. Okay. Why don't you just speak to the motion as it exists?
Okay. So I tried to be pretty extensive in the document that I sent out prior to the meeting, and I have, I guess, three primary concerns that I'm aiming to address with this motion, which is that one, services are established by council to fulfill a specific unmet need at the time of creation, and that those unmet needs can be, obviously they can change over time, and council can choose to amend existing mandates and whatnot. But I guess part of the intention of this motion is to make council aware of, basically make council aware of non-mandated advocacy and services. And you know, I'm very open to the idea that council perhaps believes that services that are doing unmandated advocacy should continue, in which case, you know, council has spoken, and then instead I'd bring forward a motion to add advocacy to those service mandates. But that's not what this motion is. That's a potential motion should council wish. And for reference, the only service that has advocacy in its mandate, now that we've passed the prior two motions, is RAISE. And prior to that, there was also ICSN and Co-op Connection. No other service has advocacy in their mandate, which means that council has never approved has never directed or mandated that any of the other services be doing advocacy. So that's the Food Support Center, the Go Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity, Off-Campus Community, Women's Center, MATES, which is Mentor Assistance Through Education and Support, and the Bike Center. Out of those, the Bike Center is the only service that does not have a position that is labeled in a way such that it implies that advocacy is a core part of their responsibilities. But I'd also like to note that the responsibilities of advocacy directors or their equivalents frequently have a lot of things besides what we might think of when we say advocacy. So that's also, I guess, worth noting. That was like the first, I guess, bubble of concern. Next, I strongly believe that advocacy on behalf of the entire student body, the way that WUSA operates, ought to have direct oversight and accountability. I spoke to this a little bit, but you know, executives who make up the bulk of the organization's direct advocacy, we report to council and our respective committees at least once a month, and then a lot of times up to multiple times a week, depending on how meetings line up. We report publicly in documents and live. We're guided by existing policies that council passed, as as well as long-range and annual plans. There's a lot of extensive oversight, and to be blunt about it, an executive can disagree with a thing that they're advocating on if council tells them to disagree, and that's not the case with service volunteers or staff, basically. So there's a different degree of accountability and oversight. And I spoke earlier to how counselors and executives are in effect public figures, and how volunteers at services are not. And as a student, there's really no effective way of knowing who your representatives are at services. It's not built into the structure or intent of how services are meant to be, because they're not meant to be representative bodies to the university. I believe that. And through funding our student-run services, we give students who speak on behalf of them, we give them power and authority that the average student does not have. We endorse service advocacy stances through student money, and we give them a platform. And I believe that we have to be really careful and intentional with the way that we do that. And lastly, this is the third thing, I guess, is that I strongly believe that services should be welcoming and inclusive to the students that it's meant to serve. Barring a student's actions that harms another student, any student who a service is meant to cater to and give support to should feel comfortable and encouraged to access that service. And I worry that advocacy can be alienating to students that a service is meant to cater to, and I believe pretty strongly in a model that separates service provision from advocacy. So not to say that advocacy should be stripped away from groups of students with lived experience, but rather that it ought to be a distinct function outside of service provision. So service provision being things like operating a safe physical space, a community center, and peer support, and running events, and creating mentorship opportunities. I would propose that it would be a positive change to separate service provision from advocacy that an individual student could disagree with and thus be discouraged from accessing a service or as a result of it. And that's really where I'm coming from. I want to make sure that our students feel comfortable accessing any service that they should be able to, because that's why we provide them.
Thanks, Catherine. Next is the representative from Rays.
Yes, for the notes, my name's Celine and I'm one of the coordinators for Rays. I would just like to let everybody know that before this motion was brought forward, as Equity Services, we were only really made aware of this on Friday. So it was like, so no communication has been had with us collectively about this motion. And that's an issue that we as Equity Services have found, is that there's an issue of non-communication about advocacy initiatives being implemented, but a motion is brought forward that has not actually been communicated with the Equity Services. So it doesn't add up. And I wanted to ask clarification on the postponing of hiring advocacy directors. So what would that mean for the service if that is approved today?
Thanks, Celine. Next, okay, there's a direct response from Matthew.
Sorry, I didn't mean to send that. I'll just withdraw that.
Okay, then we go to Catherine.
I'm just going to pop a 2 in the chat right now to Celine first. If that's okay.
Yeah, yes, please speak.
I retroactively would like to turn my speaking turn into a direct response and then take my other two speaking turns. My intention there would be to give us time to discuss basically the main motion related to service advocacy more extensively. So this includes with service coordinators, potentially service volunteers, and basically to give us a chance to actually, discuss this more, because I agree that communication was not there this time. I'd also argue that it is historically rarely there in either direction. Executives and council, we don't do a very good job of communicating with services, and I also think that the break in communication goes the other way as well, which isn't an accusation of any sort, but more just a note that I'm very cognizant of this issue, and I think that it's something that we, I guess I'll say that it's something that I am already trying my best to put in structural changes to address it. But I guess the goal here is that I wrote this down because I know that I can't think right now, but so it gives us more time to discuss the proposal as it exists. It allows for, if council votes in favor of the motion at October meeting, it would mean that that change can come into place for winter 2022 operations rather than an extra term or two of buffer. It confirms for me if council is opposed to delaying of service volunteers, because in which case, we would not delay service volunteers. The motion that I have in mind is relatively non-binding. It's more just confirmation that council is not opposed to delaying of volunteers. And then in the event that an advocacy director or equivalent position has substantial non-advocacy responsibilities, I would support services in altering the descriptions or names of existing executive positions to hire them in the normal timeline with other volunteers. But basically all the other hiring could go as normal, and then hiring of advocacy focused positions might just have to wait a couple longer. That's the intention.
Thanks, Catherine. Celine, I'll invite you to respond if you have any questions or want any clarification. If not, then we'll continue with Catherine, presumably for a motion to this effect.
Yeah, I think Catherine answered my question. It's just that a lot of this is very hurried and rushed, and there was no actual communication about any of this. So it took us all by surprise when this came, because we didn't know that this was being discussed elsewhere. And I agree that communication has not been at the forefront between services. And I would like it to be noted that services are crucial to WUS's actual functioning, and this motion doesn't actually clarify what accountability means, and it also doesn't clarify what type of advocacy, because as Stephanie mentioned earlier, there's different types of advocacy, and if we want to pass this motion, we're going to need clarification on accountability and advocacy and what it looks like.
Thanks, Celine. Yeah, and I'll just say, this is, I guess, a bit unique, in my experience with Students' Council, having coordinators come to the meetings, and I think that it has been, I think this has been good discussion. So thank you for all the service coordinators on the chat who have joined to share their perspectives. It is appreciated. Because, yeah, there is a lot of siloing in the organization. It's good to resist that. So we will go to Catherine, presumably for a motion.
I'm happy to let Steph go first. I think she has a direct response, unless you'd rather me just motion.
Okay, Steph, go first.
Yeah. I guess one way that I would ask council to sort of conceptualize what's going on here, I don't know, I find this helpful, so I'm going to say it out loud. But I see it sort of as the coordinators being employees that are voicing their concern for something that management would like to do. I don't know. It just makes things make more sense to me in terms of like understanding the legitimacy of where concerns in communication and whatnot are sort of coming from. So I don't know, for people who might think that it's, you know, out of place for the service coordinators to be commenting on these things because we are folks who, I don't know, commission them to do certain things and thus they should listen to us. I think it's also the fact that like employees and volunteers in doing that work, they deserve a place to say, hey, I think, you know, I like, while your decisions might be well intended, that's going to have consequences. And as someone who cares about this organization and the work I do, I'm going to tell you that I don't think you're going in the right direction. So I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around my feelings of a lot of things. I found it helpful to conceptualize that way and open, I guess, myself to different opinions and different feedback, given my own biases in this situation and my own experiences and cliquiness and blah, 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 blah. So I don't know. I would just challenge everyone to really sort of listen to where each other is coming from. And I think we've done a good job of that here. I know that this is incredibly, you know, frustrating for some people, especially folks who haven't been involved in council and whatnot before. And I just wanted to express, like, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your concerns. And if it's frustrating, I feel you. Words are sometimes difficult. Following council is sometimes difficult. So, you know, after this, take a break, take a nice nap, take care of yourself. Like council can be a time sometimes.
Thanks, Steph. We'll recognize the representative from GLOW, still Midas, I think.
Yeah, I just want to add to something that Steph was saying. For me personally, as a service coordinator, I'm not here to get paid and do the scope of work that VPSOL defines for me. I'm here to support my community and do what best is for my community. And the pay part is basically nothing because we used to get $500 for 4 terms. The first term that I was a coordinator, we were told that we're going to get like $250 between like the two of us because we didn't have any budget because of COVID. So that's not the case. Like, this is not about us doing the job that you define. This is about us being there for our community. I also want to like point out that what happened with the miscommunication for this meeting is the same thing that happens for a lot of advocacy projects that we want to work on. We got the memo to this meeting on Friday, and despite assignments that we have, is that anything that we have to work on, we had to have a meeting on Saturday to talk about what this, I would say, very problematic memo says, at least problematic for the services, and then come to the meeting to defend why we are very disagree with a lot of the things on this document. Same thing goes with another thing like health services. They make decisions and that they come to us and we don't have any power to say that this is not what that can possibly work for us. I also want to point out again that even though the word advocacy is not in the mandate of GLOW, it has always been implied GLOW was created to advocate for queer trans questioning students on campus. and advocacy was always a big part of what GLOW does.
Thanks, Midas. We go now to Catherine.
Pasted my motion in the chat.
Okay, there's a motion resolved that council supports delaying the hiring process for winter 2022 Federation service. Catherine,
Sorry,
can
to
I ask,
clarify,
is this an amendment to the motion as is currently on the table? So
no, this is
the
a
motion
new
to.
motion.
Okay. So right now the question on the table is to support the motion on so the resolution before council right now, so I can clarify for everybody, is resolved that Federation services whose mandates do not explicitly identify advocacy in their purpose as outlined in Council Procedure 25 shall not make advocacy part of their standard structures and operations. That's the question before council right now. You want to amend the motion by, what I'm suggesting is you should table the motion first, then do this delaying, because like otherwise it's to amend to include both of those.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to motion to table the motion on the table.
Postpone consideration.
Yeah, I'd like to postpone consideration of the motion on the table to the October 2021 regular council meeting.
Okay. Is there a second to
I'll
postpone? Who is that?
Cannon.
Okay. So now there's a motion to postpone consideration of the amendment to Council Procedure 26, or the interpretation of Council Procedure 26. Does anybody wish to speak to postponing consideration of this item? Seeing none, does anybody oppose postponing consideration? That is to say, you want us to vote on this now. Does anybody oppose? Does anybody wish to abstain? Okay, hearing neither, that carries unanimously. We postpone consideration of this motion to October. And I'll go back to Vice President Dong.
Thanks. I'd like to motion to be it resolved that council supports delaying the hiring process for winter 2022 Federation service, which are the student-run service, volunteer positions intended to focus on advocacy. Just for a little bit of, can I clarify now, or should there be a seconder first?
You can speak to the motion.
Okay. I also see that Matthew seconds in the chat. One, I call it Federation Service, just because that's the name in council procedures. So just for like continuity there in language. And then otherwise, I know that I was hesitant to do this because I was worried that it'd seem a lot more operational than is ideal for something to go to council, but the goal here is not for council to basically like bind anybody to anything, but more it is just something that allows me to know that council is not opposed to me basically asking for that hiring process to be slightly delayed.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion to support delaying the hiring of service volunteers, for advocacy volunteers specifically? Okay, it looks like I saw a hand up from Matthew first, and then we'll go to Vincent.
The hand up is just my two. I want to say I am in favor of doing this so that council, not just council, but the Vice President of Student Life can have a chance to consult with relevant stakeholders before any decision about this is made. But obviously, like, we can't have things this decision could impact going forward. That doesn't make much sense. But I would just like to know for certainty, not because this is binding, but just so that everyone in council knows. So I'll ask you, Catherine. This is only going to delay it as long as it needs to be delayed for council to consider the item, right? No longer. Just still going to happen this term, provided council sees the motion or is able to consider the motion regardless of the way they vote. Cool.
Yes. It will only be delayed for as long as it needs to be, which is basically council make a decision in October.
Okay. Next is Vincent. Sorry, I'm.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this would include, I guess Raise now is the only service that has advocacy explicitly in their mandate.
May I respond? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're not on my screen. It would not include Raise, which I just realized that is not clear. I'm just gonna amend the motion on the motion on the floor and assume that it's friendly. Please ignore me.
Sorry, you want to amend the motion you've presented?
Yes, because I just realized that it is not clear that it does not include services with advocacy in their mandate. So, sorry.
Can you read the motion as you intend it?
I'm going to type out the exact wording, but it will be along the lines of, be it resolved that council supports delaying the hiring process for winter 2022 Federation services without advocacy explicitly stated in their mandate, volunteer positions intended to focus on advocacy. I will make the words make sense.
Okay, then okay, then I guess we wait for that to be typed so everybody can read it and vote on it. I'll recognize Hyatt.
Good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. right now. I have a quick question where when it's directed to Catherine about saying delaying advocacy. So, for example, all the other service like the Women's Center and GLOW, they will not be able to hire advocacy directors until winter, if I'm understanding that correctly, or is there any confusion on my part?
Yeah, please, Catherine.
Hiring, to my understanding, postings for hiring usually go up around reading week. And so this would just push the specific postings going up to basically like a week or two later. They'd still be able to hire for winter if advocacy structures stay as they are. So they'd be hiring still for winter. It's just that hiring, the postings going up would be delayed by a week or two.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Okay, so now we're just waiting for the typed motion to appear in the chat so I can read it. Okay, here we go. So there's a motion on the floor. Be it resolved that council supports delaying the hiring process for winter 2022 Federation services, volunteer positions intended to focus on advocacy where the service does not have advocacy explicitly stated in its mandate. So that was moved by Catherine, seconded by Matthew. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Okay, hearing none, we take it to a vote. Those opposed, please indicate so somehow in the chat or say aloud or whatever. Somewhere where I can see it. Does anybody wish to abstain? I'll note my abstention being in the chair. Okay, then that carries. Now we move to item 6.1. And thank you again to all the service coordinators for joining our council meeting. I'm reiterating what I've already said, but like there is definitely a disconnect between sort of governance-oriented folks and more like the service equity work-oriented people, and it's very good to have the worlds collide and be able to, increase communication. So thank you for your patience and understanding and joining the meeting. And you're welcome anytime. And we go to item 6.1, and Cannon will take the chair back.
Perfect. I like this power again. Just kidding, folks. Okay, so 6.1 is the employment standards and co-op student discussion submitted by Councillor Lan. Can I have a seconder for that, please? I'm opening up the chat, so give me a second. So, Councillor Macri seconds, perfect. Councillor Lan, you have the first right of speaking.
All right, thank you. When I started my first co-op basically 4 months ago, oh, there's a POP.
Sorry, Councillor, yeah. Representative Aquino, go ahead.
So does anyone know what happened to Connor? Because he was taking live notes and oh, okay, never mind. Ben, I guess Ben has it covered.
Yes.
It's just so like people could see who's talking when.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative Aquino. Councillor Lan, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. When I started my first co-op 4 months ago, I want to know what rights and benefits I deserve. So I looked through the Ontario Employment Standard Act. When I looked at Part 3 of the Act, basically it says co-op students are not covered by the Act. That's the first line of my motion. You can read that. And if you want to know more about the Act, you can click on the link. So basically it means employers are not required to pay for overtimes, not pay for stat holidays. Employers can terminate or fire co-op students without proper notice, because again, co-op students are not covered under the Employment Act. And I talked to my legal study 101 professor, Dr. Ryan DeBeat from the Sociology and Legal Study Department about my understanding of the Act, and I was correct. So co-op students are not covered under this Act. Our school is renowned for the co-op program, and more than 70% of our full-time students are enrolled in this program. And according to a report from Deloitte, it says our co-op program contributed 567 million to Canada's GDP in 2018 to 2019. So I think that we deserve a better co-op working rights and benefits. At least we should be covered under the Employment Act. I understand that this provision in the Act is employer-friendly, as employers can lower their cost. However, this loophole can potentially lead to exploitation. There are already some Reddit posts talking about the employers asking students to work long hours and refuse to pay for overtimes. If this case happens, what can the students do? Sue the company or ask for compensations? No way, because the law is not on our side. And don't forget that employers will evaluate students' performance and record it on Waterloo work or on the transcript. So what can students do in these cases? They can only give that employer a bad rating on Waterloo work, but students will still apply for that company due to the competitiveness of the co-op process. Although these cases rarely happen, the majority of companies will treat co-op students as their full-time employees, meaning the majority of our co-op students won't have this kind of issue. But I believe that it is necessary for us to advocate for better benefits. If such section 3.5.2 is removed and the loophole will be fixed, then off-fault treatment won't happen. I believe that like USA's power is not strong enough to resolve these issues. That's why I wrote that on my Be It Resolved clause that staff should work with Ontario Undergrad Student Alliance and use its power and influence to move this advocacy to the next step. And I also talked to the MPP Waterloo and the MPP Kitchener, and I got back from MPP Kitchener that we will set up a meeting in October 12th. She's also the critic for college and university of the NTP. So that's the motion. If you have any question, please ask.
Thank you, Councillor Lan. Councillor Macri, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Land for his great work on this motion and all the research you put into it. The only possible objection I can think of is if someone were to say that this would discourage employers from hiring co-op students, and to that I would say any employer who is discouraged from hiring co-op students because they would have to give them the same rights that they are legally required to give every other worker is not an employer that I think we should welcome on Waterloo Works or in our co-op program if their intent is to just mistreat students. My only question, and I guess this goes to Steph, is I guess as VPAD, are you comfortable with us passing this now, or would you prefer that this goes to EAC or some other body first?
We have a direct response from Councillor Lan. Go ahead, Councillor Lan.
Yeah, I understand that like your concerns about employers if they don't want to hire co-op students anymore because the cost will be higher. Honestly, like most companies nowadays, they treat co-op students as their employees, meaning they just give they pay for stat holidays, they pay for overtimes. Again, this loophole just a very, I would say, a small number of companies use these loopholes to mistreat our students.
Councillor Macri, you have a direct response.
I just want to clarify in case I was misunderstood. I'm not concerned that employers wouldn't hire students if this were to happen, because I think any employers who would make the decision not to hire students because of this are not employers that I think we should be working with if their intent is to mistreat students. That was
Vice
my point.
President Email, you have a direct response. If he is speaking, we cannot hear you right now, Vice President Emo.
Steph's just having mic problems. Give her a moment.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Steph speaking through Catherine right now because we are having a lot of fun. Hello, can you hear me? Internet issues.
Yes.
Okay, everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to take the opportunity to answer Vincent's question. Maybe this isn't the most direct way of answering the question, but I have been communicating with Councillor Lan about his concerns. And I've been looking into sort of the issue. I do think that this is definitely one way to solve some of the concerns, but I think the bigger issue, of course, is the issue of the power relations between employers and co-op students and the precarious, vulnerable position that co-op students are in. So I'm not opposed to passing this act, but I guess I would suggest that we amend it a little bit in that so from what I've heard from CEE and some other resources is that taking on this advocacy task is going to eat up a lot of resources and not probably address sort of a lot of the concerns that we have per se. So for instance, if you were able to, delete that section of the ESA does not cover students who work in accounting and finance. Like accounting and finance just isn't covered by the Act at all. There's a couple of other professions, I think some startups as well, that aren't covered by it. So we wouldn't be addressing those concerns. And also it's restricted to students who are working in Ontario. I would like to ask, I guess, if council is okay with me doing, I guess, a bigger sort of deep dive into this problem, and maybe proposing other ways that might be more impactful to addressing it. It might evolve into its own report, honestly, just given the scope of the problem. Been looking to it a lot, and there's a lot of complex components, I'll say, and I'm fully willing to do that. It is kind of alluded to in sort of the annual plan when it comes to addressing some of the concerns that students are having about vulnerability. So I would say it does build on that. It might take away from some of my other projects because this will be a bigger project, and I imagine the subsequent VP education will also need to carry on this work, which is why I would ask for council's permission to, I guess, pass that, to start the work, but then ultimately pass it off to whoever comes after me. So trying to think if there's anything else that I'm forgetting here. Yeah, I might need to figure out something to amend the policy, or if anyone is listening closely to what I'm saying and would like to make an amendment that reflects that, that'd be great. Also would just ask Jay, if you could look me into that meeting that you're going to have with MPP Maylindo. It's just going to be a lot easier for me to act on this if I'm included in those conversations. But as someone who sort of is championing this, I'm happy to include you in sort of conversations as they go and let you play a larger role in sort of advancing these things forward, if that is something that you would like.
Thank you, Vice President Email. Go ahead, Councillor Lan.
Yeah, we can definitely continue this conversation offline. Yeah, I think that like our VPAD should lead this project. I know this advocacy take a lot of time and lots of efforts, because I know Steph, you are taking roles at OUSA. I think it might be convenient to work with them to move this thing forward, because again, this thing I would say it's really difficult to move this advocacy if we only use WUSA's power. It's better to collaborate with other universities, because Waterloo is not the only university have co-op programs. So I would still suggest to work with OUSA to move this forward. Again, also like I also look at other provinces or territories Employment Act, and I would say Ontario and Quebec are the only two jurisdictions have such exemptions.
Go ahead, Vice President Schwartz.
Thank you. So I made this one point before Steph had spoken, but much of what I had to say is echoing what she had to say, which is I really do support taking a closer look at the issues faced by co-op students. And from my time, both now and back when I was VP academic at MathStock, it was very clear that there is a lack of accountability for and a lack of enforcement of rules for co-op students in their co-op employment. But for both the reasons Steph highlighted and some other reasons, I don't think that this is necessarily the right direction to go. There's a number of issues, for example, that co-op students face in their workplaces, sexual harassment being one of them, that are already illegal, are already not allowed, but do also have existing issues with our ability to enforce and ensure that workplaces are safe and accountable for students. So I think that there are a lot of different ways to approach this, and I think that this motion is overly restrictive in prescribing a certain outcome when it isn't necessarily the correct one. So I would like to motion to strike the final be it resolved and replace it with a be it resolved that council asks the VP Education to consider this issue closely and make pursuing the gaps in labor rights for co-op students a priority this year, and for handing off to her successor as well.
Thank you, Vice President Schwartz. Sorry, go ahead with your point of order. My chat was not working properly. VP Dong.
VP Dong was just saying that you skipped me since mine was a direct response.
My mistake. Go ahead, VP Emo again.
Hi, I am still VP Emo speaking through Catherine. I realize that like Matt has, well, okay, he didn't officially, I'm going to interpret it as he didn't officially motion to do an amendment and propose my own amendment where we strike the last line and we say that we task the VP Education to develop a research and advocacy proposal with the goal of addressing the issue of vulnerability of co-op students, and that in this proposal for council's approval that we include consideration of the difficulty and benefits of taking on an advocacy project to strike that particular line in the ESA.
Do we have a seconder? Matthew, VP Schwartz seconds.
Just typing out the motion for folks.
Yes, I was going to ask for sake of my
teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Please ignore any spelling errors.
Okay.
Oh no, something. Hey Matt, can you do me a favor and write that out better? Sorry, it's hard to write something when the internet doesn't like us in the office right now.
It's a conspiracy theory from university trying to stop our governance process. Just kidding, folks. Councillor Lan, you have a direct response till the time. We'll go with you till the time VP Schwartz polishes up the motion.
Okay, I would say this is a friendly amendment. I would accept it, and and I would like to say, Matthew just mentioned like things like sexual harassment or other things. These are regulated in other act, but the benefits and the rights under the ESA, they should be considered. As I mentioned, like things like overtime fees or fire a student without proper notice, these things should be considered. And is it possible if I ask for a ETA for the proposal?
I would be hoping to have it done for next council meeting. I'll give you whatever I have next council meeting. How about that? And if I need extra time, I'll communicate it then. I already have, I guess, a couple working documents since you first emailed me. So I think we should be good. But yeah, should have something for next council. I'm going to try and streamline it because I do know that this is an important issue, and my newly hired AVP experiential and co-op affairs is also very keen to address the issue. But yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, honestly, just looking at this from like my expertise as like an advocate and someone who does government relations stuff, this is probably going to evolve into a bigger project than you would expect. But again, it's important. Happy to take it on. Just wants to make sure that council is comfortable with us dedicating resources to this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your work.
No worries. Thanks.
VP Schwartz, do you have the polished up motion? Do you want to read the motion?
Happy to read the motion. So first, strike the be it resolved that in the motion, and then replace that with be it resolved that we task the VP Education to develop a research and advocacy proposal with the goal of addressing the issue of vulnerability of co-op students. And in this, council approves that we include consideration of the difficulty, feasibility, and benefits of taking on the specific project of covering co-op students with the Employment Standards Act.
Is everyone okay with this motion, or would anyone like to amend anything? Okay, so I'm gonna take this amendment on consensus unless anyone has any issues with the amendment to save time. If you have any issues, either raise your hand, type it in the chat. Going once, going twice. Okay, the amendment has been taken on consensus.
Ken and I have a thing.
Go ahead, Councillor Macri.
I'm wondering why we're tasking just the VPAD explicitly and not, I guess, like the VPAD or any of the relevant committees that would work with the VPAD, like EAC or Co-op Students Council.
I'm just going to directly respond to it. VPAD can always take these issues to any of the committees that they're in charge of and take feedback there, so we don't need to specify those.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone has any other concerns?
Yeah.
Okay, so the amendment has been taken on consensus.
Aye.
Sorry, is that VP email?
Yes, this is VP email.
Go ahead, VP email.
Yeah, just wanted to say that my intention is to run the proposal by EAC for feedback and stuff before I bring it to council. You are free to amend the motion such to explicitly make me do that, but just wanted to say that my intention is to do so, and if you do not trust me, you can get that in writing.
I would hope council trusts our executives enough in this matter. And if not, then whenever the next time it comes to council, we can confirm that they took it to the various committees just to save time. Let's move on. So we have the motion as amended. Is there anything else anyone would like to say on the motion as amended now? Going once. Okay, let's move on to voting on the motion as amended. Anyone against this motion as amended? If yes, please type it in the chat. Oh, Catherine, is that one for now? Seems like no. Okay. Anyone abstaining on this motion? Motion passes unanimously with Councillor Lan and Councillor Macri noted in favor. Moving on to 6.3. Fall 2021 return to campus. Somebody to a Vice President email. I will second. Vice President email, you can start the discussion item.
Hello. Since I'm usually in my ivory tower, that is the office with no internet, I would like to hear from students what's going on in terms of return to campus. I've seen a bunch of threads on Reddit that I've tried to engage with, but also sort of as the executives' eyes and ears on the ground. If you could just let us know stuff that is going well, stuff that isn't going so well. We're probably going to release a survey and do some other forms of consultation as well. I have this set up for EAC, but just for the folks who are present, if you could flag anything that you've heard, seen, would like, would be really helpful to sort of get that information down to us. I think Ben and I are going to have a walk through the different campus buildings to get a sense of that. But obviously, as someone who doesn't have classes right now, I only understand so much of what's going on. So be my eyes, ears, yay, collaboration. Okay, tell me things now.
Thank you, Vice President Emo. Councillor Macri, go ahead.
Yeah, so just speaking to fall, like this term, what's happening this term, some issues that I have heard from students is there's a lack of spaces that are open, which has the effect of it being difficult to do social distancing or follow the rules if there's like not enough space to be able to like be socially distant, or nowhere to, or if there's no like designated dining areas that are open or have enough seats, then there's no way students can eat while following the rules. I know like right now they can eat outside, but soon the weather will get colder. Another issue that I've seen is a lack of enforcement of rules. You know, like I don't really know how they're enforcing the vaccine mandate, and that's something that I know is really important to a lot of students, that that mandate was in place and that it obviously it needs to be enforced. And we haven't seen much enforcement there. And a lot of lack of clarity from the university about what's happening. Is anything going to change over the coming weeks and months, like just during this term? There's a lot of, you know, there's very poor communication from the university on what's going on.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. Representative Aquino, go ahead.
I guess for when the VPAD, Stephanie and Vice President Benjamin goes to the campus, just to make sure like there is, because last year during the report of the accessibility, Abby told me there was better signage for classrooms or just getting around campus. So just making sure that's in place. If not, then I know what like people like. I don't want students getting lost, especially in buildings like PASS and MC. And that's all.
Thank you, Representative Aquino. Next, we have Councillor Camry, I believe.
Cami.
Cami, sorry. I couldn't see your last name fully, but I just remember this one, C-A-M.
No worries. I would second what Councillor Macri said about open spaces, particularly dining spaces. I went onto campus to have lunch and I wanted to sit in the new SLC expansion. And due to social distancing measures, of course, there weren't enough seats. So I tried to find an alternative dining area indoors and I couldn't find one that seemed appropriate. And I was able to eat outside, but I really worry about students that want to come onto campus, particularly to see all of the improvements, including the new wayfinding and SLC expansion, and then not being able to enjoy being on campus again when it gets cold due to lack of eating spaces or better socialization spaces. I would also say that again, a concern that I've heard from students is the enforcement of the vaccine mandate with regards to classes for winter term, as well as any events or clubs that will be hosting, you know, whatever events or meetings on campus. I think a lot of people that I've spoken with have expressed that they're not willing to return to campus unless they have more information about the vaccine mandate being actually enforced and seeing evidence of it, particularly with the breaking of social distancing rules seen off campus recently. I think students are very concerned about if the mandate and social distancing COVID rules will be enforced when they have to return to campus in winter.
Thank you, Councillor Cami. Cami. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Councillor Lan, go ahead.
Yeah, like I also want to mention that there are not enough space, both dining space or study space. For example, the DP library is only open like first and second floor, and the fourth floor above not opened. And also about the vaccine things, I know people getting vaccines out of Canada and getting the vaccines are not approved by the Health of Canada. Literally, they cannot use the gym at the moment. It's just a thing I want to mention.
Thank you, Councillor Lan. Next, we have Councillor. I'm just gonna well, we have a direct response from President Easton. Sorry, go ahead, President Easton.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done this, but thanks. That point, Jay, that you made about which vaccines are accepted for access to gyms is particularly like of interest to me, because my understanding has been that the universities has accepted World Health Organization approved vaccines, which is a broader set than those approved by Health Canada. So I will definitely, and I guess this is just in general for all the people bringing up concerns, I will like be bringing these up with the Associate Provost students who I meet with on Thursday. So thank you. And then I see Steph wants to know if Jay has a clarification about World Health Organization approved vaccines, and Jay is responding. So.
Yeah, I called the health unit yesterday. Just that like they are only accepting Canada approved vaccines. If you want to go to the gym, if you want to go to the cinema or dine out. But I'm not sure how the school gym is going to implement this policy, or are they still accept WHO approved vaccines at the moment?
Okay, so for off campus, you're referring to, okay, that's
No,
helpful.
I'm referring to on campus, the on campus gym.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I will follow up about that, because I know for residents, for example, they had sorry, I'm like kind of screwing over your your speaking order here, Ken, and my apologies, but yeah, the on-campus gyms, I'll clarify about that, because my understanding is that the university had yeah, was using World Health Organization approved, not Health Canada approved.
Councillor Lan, go ahead again.
Yeah, like the WHO approved. That's like the before the 22nd, before the provincial and provincial vaccine passport come into effect. So I would say if there any clarification about like our gyms requirement for vaccines, or maybe Catherine can. Oh, sorry, Catherine or staff can. Explain this.
Thank you, Councillor Lan. VP Emo, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Catherine and I are essentially the same person. Yeah, I just wanted to say that like something I've been trying to understand too, and that I suspect might have happened is with sort of the vaccine passport and the rules and regulations coming into play. I think that like despite the fact that we're on a university campus with its own sort of like mandatory vaccine thing, that like let's say a dining area or a gym, or if we had like a theater or whatnot, that would all, you know, just be beholden to the Ontario rules, which is concerning, I think, in a lot of ways. But that's what I suspect is happening, and that might be why people aren't allowed in the packed gym or whatnot. And it does create some sort of concerns for students who aren't vaccinated with who approve vaccines. Although it was to my understanding that the Ontario government was accepting who approve vaccines. So I don't know if it's just a matter of validating that, because I know that there are issues for like out-of-province students to prove that they've been vaccinated. I'm wondering if a similar thing is happening for international students. I don't know if folks can ask around and find that for me, but that would be appreciated. Sorry if I'm rambling. I'm just thinking out loud. Thank you very much.
Ken, I don't know if you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I was. I spoke my entire thing and then I didn't realize. Okay, I was just saying, Councillor Land, you have spoken 4 times already, so you have had a lot of time to speak and directly respond. So I'm going to move to people who haven't spoken before or have only spoken once or twice. So we will move to Councillor Kami and then we'll go to Councillor Rettinger.
Yeah, hi. Just in response to Steph, there are issues with, I think, students' anxiety about their vaccines not being accepted. However, the Waterloo region has an online form where out-of-province and international members of the community that have been vaccinated can upload their proof of vaccination with the region. And then the region will validate it and presumably give that person some sort of QR code or receipt that it has been approved. I myself have not received this approval yet. I only uploaded my vaccine card a couple of days ago, but I think with regards to on-campus gyms and approval, it's some sort of miscommunication between the province, which I know is accepting all who approve vaccines, and maybe not trusting the receipts that the students have. But if the students like upload them to the Waterloo region, I don't know, it's like more credible. I'm not sure, but I think it's just some miscommunication.
Thank you, Councillor Kami. I'm just going to respond to the POI online too. So there was a POI about are rapid antigen tests available to the university for those who don't have a vaccine? The answer is yes. And even people who are vaccinated can do home test and stuff. Moving on, we're going to go to Councillor Rettinger next.
Yeah, I was just wondering with the coming winter months, it's harder to kind of plan to have social gatherings outdoors, but would it be possible to invest in, say, kind of like warming booths around where like the old bomber outdoor spaces are? Like, for instance, having like those heating machines where it just like blasts heat for like a few minutes on like a table area, just so it provides an option for students if they would like to sit outside and kind of be socially distanced outdoors.
I would direct that question to VP Schwartz as the person in charge of capital improvements to the buildings.
Hello. That is not something that has been considered before. That's something that I can certainly take into consideration. I suppose my immediate questions that I would do research about that are the cost associated with that and the relative improvement to student life versus other things we could invest in. But I will certainly take that under advisement and talk about that with other members of other WUSA employees responsible for that sort of capital improvement. So I appreciate that.
Next, we have a direct response from VP Dong.
Hi, I am not VP Dong. I am staff. Hi, nice to meet you. Sorry, very exciting thing that I can direct you to endowment funds. You can propose to have warming stations from WESF or MEF or WUSA's very own Student Life Endowment Fund. If you want to make, changes to the campus life environment or investments that aren't covered in our budget, that's another venue you can do. Would strongly encourage you to do so. That is all.
Thank you, VP Email. Anyone else? Well, since no one else is speaking, I'll let you go to your direct response, Councillor Lan, if you still want to.
Oh, I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone else want to speak on this discussion item? Speak now or forever hold your tongue. Or just email the execs later. Okay, we can move on to winter 2022 plans, which is item 6.4 on our agenda, and hopefully the last item. Again, the item's discussion on the university announcement that we'll be returning back to pre-pandemic levels of in-person instruction for winter 2022, submitted by Vice President Emo. I will second. And Vice President Emo, you have the first right to speak as the motion submitter or mover.
Hi there. I'm wondering if I can get some direction from council. I guess if there's any sort of advocacy or anything that we want WUSO to say to the university on this announcement. I know before our sort of position was we want to get back in person as soon as possible, as long as we are making accommodations for students who literally can't return, either because of being immunocompromised or having visa issues. So offering students that flexibility to move forward. But given sort of the discussion that we had with the last item, I'm wondering if perhaps we would like to go in another direction. And this is just me throwing ideas at the wall here, but saying that like you shouldn't plan for in-person instruction when you don't have the ability to provide sort of some of the other benefits that come with in-person instruction, such as club space or areas to study in person, things like that. If maybe we just want to tell the university that like, hey, actually being online is probably more convenient if the alternative is having a campus that literally is hardly open, and we're making people go to the plaza and eat like their lunches like little gremlins outside in the freezing cold. That is all. Please discuss.
Thank you, Western Email. Councillor Macri, you're first. Go ahead.
So the concerns I've heard students raise is when they're upset about a lack of clarity, the university taking so long to make a decision, because the longer they delayed making a decision, now it can be more difficult for students to find housing. Another issue, and we kind of saw this term, is I think students should know when choosing their courses if it's going to be in person or online. The instructor, like if the instructor changes their mind and says, I'm not comfortable teaching an in-person course, then rather than the course model suddenly changing from what students signed up for, I think they should assign a different instructor. I think in terms of what we should do, I think it would be best to continue with our current advocacy of opening things up. I think if the university were to actually enforce the rules that they have, I think a lot of the other problems could get solved. We should be able to open up more spaces if rules are actually being enforced. I think it might be wise to advocate that, as any instructors that are willing, do something like live stream or record the lectures, just for those few number of students who don't want to or don't feel safe returning to campus yet. It would also be helpful that if someone is feeling sick, if they know that the lecture is being recorded, they don't need to worry about missing class. If they're feeling, if they stay home, then they could still see the lecture if it were to be recorded, and that would also prevent outbreaks from happening. Making it known when students are picking their courses, whether or not a course is doable online, even if it's offered in person. You know, if there's no in-person exam and the lectures are all being live streamed or recorded or something like that, even if the lectures are in person, then a student could enroll in that course and essentially take it online, or know or have the peace of mind knowing that they won't have to make the decision between missing class material if they're sick or something like that. Generally, I think the university needs to make their decisions and be a lot more transparent about what they're doing, what they're planning. Students shouldn't be finding out a week before their course starts that, hey, this course has suddenly switched to online only, or this instructor has decided to record all of the lectures, which means I didn't need to sign a lease to live in Waterloo because I don't need to. But I think generally we should continue advocating to reopen while making it possible for students to participate online if for some reason they can't come to campus. Basically record your lectures.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. Representative Aquino, go ahead.
There's already direct response from Jay ahead of me.
Councillor Deland, go ahead with the direct response.
Thank you, Vicky. I just want to say I totally agree with Vincent said. If students are not comfortable with the in-person settings, they can still do online courses entirely. Because I know people will do that. They just because we are in the middle of the course selection period. If students are not comfortable with the in-person settings, they can do it entirely online. But again, no one could know what's gonna happen in January. So I still think we should advocate for full open in the winter term.
Thank you, Councillor Lan. I guess next we have direct response from,
I'm withdrawing my new point, but I want to respond to Vincent.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Representative Aquino.
So I agree. I also heard hers from someone from my constituency and who's part of the chronically ill / disabled community about how they don't have vaccines, their vaccines, but they don't have it because of adverse reactions to other vaccines. Therefore, I'm not sure how they're going to navigate winter if the school is making more in-person classes, because they don't live in the area right now, and they also have some special circumstances too, which make it would be hard for them to find a 4-month sublet just for classes that could maybe just go back online. So that's my kind of concern with how the university's handling it. Also knowing we're still in kind of a fourth wave, not real. I don't even know with how COVID is being and such.
Thank you, Representative Aquino. Vice President, who is this, Dong or Emo?
Basically the same person. Catherine went to the washroom, I think.
Okay, so Vice President Emo.
Yeah. Sorry, just wanted to, I guess, I am salty too that everything is very last minute, but I just wanted to say for everyone's reference that it's a little bit more than the university causing problems as well. It's also the province not offering much guidance, specifically the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. Obviously there's some issues from the university end, but the entire thing is a mess. And I think the likelihood that we're going to get faster and better communication, that's something the university wants to provide. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do that with the resources and decisions that are being made higher up from them. So I guess just be cognizant of that. I guess one question that I would like, or okay, so just for confirmation, what counselors who have spoken thus far want me to do is basically say, hey, yes, plan to be in person, but understand that like we definitely can't go back to a completely return to normal thing, and that you're going to have to continue providing options online because not everyone is going to come onto campus. If that is correct, can you please thumbs up my comment, I guess? Sorry, and the sorry, Cannon. I know I'm messing things up. Sorry, but the other thing I just want to ask is like, let's say that return to campus is only ever going to be able to look like what it is right now, like for winter. If it's just going to be a complete duplicate of this, would you still like me to advocate for in-person instruction if we know that in-person instruction is going to look as it does currently? Is sir my question.
Thank you, Vice President Emo. Councillor Mack, do you have a direct response?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in in-person instruction, just like how many students have, some students have found that online learning has been very beneficial to them. Lots of other students have found it to be the opposite. I think that looking at the current plans for winter, if it's just like it is now in terms of all the other restrictions, except instead of a handful of classes being in person, almost all classes are in person, I think that would be an improvement over right now, just having in-person classes. I think what our main advocacy goal here should be is just having as many instructors as possible like record or live stream their lectures and make it known like now or like before courses start if that instructor is doing it, so students can pick courses accordingly. And also make sure that if a student is feeling sick that they don't have to worry about missing material. I think more in-person classes, even if there's other restrictions are like they are now, would be an improvement, although I would much prefer the university to enforce the restrictions they have, enforce the vaccine mandate so that they can start lifting some of the restrictions. Like I believe other universities are doing.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. I'm going to take no more direct responses to this point, so we'll move on to VP Schwartz.
Thank you. There are two things that I want to note. Number one is I just wanted to note for counselors that in terms of WUSA's operations, WUSA throughout the budgeting process and throughout the planning process for operations over the next year, it was planned at all times to be prepared for 100% in-person operations in the fall and 100% normal operations. So in terms of where WUSA's budgets are at, where WUSA departments are planning and services are planning, that is all prepared to offer full services in the fall. And then the other thing I wanted to note is more from my perspective as a student and my background, the student representation, at least in the mathematics faculty, is that I think that online learning has provided a lot of drawbacks from in-person learning, but there's been a lot of unique benefits that were sort of forced to be developed. One thing that I'd point to is more the use of assignments and practical cases in place of assessments like that would normally just be exams in order to sort of summarize the content and learning of a course. There's a lot of very valuable things that I think online learning has forced the development of. And one thing that I fear is that as we move back in person, we move back to all of the assessment mechanisms of the past. So one thing that I would appreciate as being sort of a secondary thing on your mind, Steph, and a secondary thing that we focus on is noting to the university, and I would recommend the faculty presidents also consider this when going back to your societies, is to advocate that the benefits and the new things that have been developed for in-person learning ideally be kept around in whatever way a professor can, and that CEL or other parts of the university continue to give support to professors to develop more effective, engaging, and applicable assessment mechanisms than were used in the past. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President Schwartz. Councillor Macker, you have a POI?
Yeah. Vice President Schwartz said something about WUSA being prepared for fully in-person fall. Did he mean to say winter? Matthew,
You are
you're
muted, Matthew.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I did mean winter. I meant winter, and WUSA budgeting and planning was always intended to look at 100% for winter, not for fall.
Thank you. Next, we move on to Councillor Kami.
I think there's a point of interest in the chat.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I was gonna just, yeah, that's fine. You can continue, Councillor Kami. Oh wait, sorry, Councillor Baines, do you have a POI, or was your POI that you withdraw your one?
I actually did have a POI as well.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure. Yeah, the correct setting or not. I was just interested for VP Shorsey. I was wondering, is there any like within that budget, like, you know, because we're going to be kind of going back into person, I found that some of like the campuses that are kind of remote. So for example, like pharmacy, my representation, and GBDA. I found that there's been, you know, within WUSA, just like a lack of interest almost from some of those, you know, again, faculties that are kind of further away. So I was just wondering, within like the operational budget, will there be kind of, you know, a focus or, you know, budget towards kind of re-engaging almost, you know, some of those campuses? And because I know in the past, for example, there have been, you know, events that have been run on main campus then that are replicated, you know, within these smaller campuses, like for example, like a hot chocolate or something like that. I was just kind of going through my older notes and I saw that was happening before, and wasn't necessarily happening as much during COVID, which, you know, I can completely understand, but, you know, I was hoping to kind of return to that almost, if that were possible. And we're also having, you know, trouble. I'm sure many people may have noticed in the past couple of meetings, we actually don't have a Kitchener rep. We've been having lots of trouble getting a Kitchener rep for these WUSA council meetings. And so again, we think one problem will kind of help the other as well.
Can I respond to that, Cannon?
Yes, go ahead. Just to let you know, like yeah, go ahead. Actually, never mind.
Cool. Thank you so much. So thank you for that POI, or for that question or statement there. In terms of that WUSA operations, that is just WUSA's general budget that council approved previously. So that my understanding, although I'm not sure specifically of most of what you're talking to would fall under campus life department operations. I'm not sure what specific events are planned. That was in general, we took a look at the budgets and stuff that they proposed for that 100% in-person operations, and they were told to budget with that in mind. I don't know what specific events that speaks to. I can, however, note that oftentimes for faculty-specific things, WUSA's sort of event running is done through the societies. So it's the faculty societies that tend to focus on those events. So sometimes I would say that and I'm speaking a little bit shakier here and more speaking as I'm thinking. So sorry for that, but that we'd be happy to partner with them on sort of providing some of those more direct things, but also we can speak to, and maybe that's something for Catherine to do, the VPSL, to talk to Campus Life Department about what their plans are for running things on satellite campuses and seeing how that works. I can't specifically answer the question though, although I very much appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, it is okay if I just kind of quickly respond to that. I just want to say, yeah, thanks. I didn't mean to kind of, you know, throw that on you. I really just wanted to bring it up during this meeting so that, you know, we can kind of get it, you know, get people thinking about it at least a little bit, and maybe try to have some action towards it, maybe even in, you know, later council meetings as well. And yeah, I can definitely, you know, discuss that with, I guess, the right VP at this point as well. So I do appreciate you kind of taking a stab at that question.
Thank you, Councillor Baines and VP Schwartz. We will move to Councillor Kami now.
Yeah, so going along the lines of what everybody else has mentioned, I have heard from students with particular concerns for housing in winter 2022, trying to find 4-month sublets if they haven't already moved back to the region, as well as some of the other issues in the housing market as it currently stands in the Waterloo region. I would just ask that any sort of advocacy or conversations with the university include concerns about housing, and that resources for housing be included in university memos to students throughout the fall term, so that students, when making their course selection or planning to return to campus upon further information from the university, also have access to housing resources, especially if they are not already located in the region. I also say that I agree with WUSA advocating for a fuller return to in-person classes, because I think a lot of students, especially those who might be graduating, definitely want to have a final semester more on campus and more normal. But definitely agree with advocating for in-person classes to record all of their lectures and keep a lot of the online elements that allow students to participate even if they can't make it to in-person lectures.
Thank you, Councillor Kami. Do we have I see VPSL has a direct response to Councillor Bain's question, so I'll let them do that. Go ahead, VP Dong, I guess. Unless you've already done that and I'm not remembering it.
Hello, hi, sorry, I'm not Catherine again.
VP Ed, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to, I guess, bring up that perhaps something that the executive team will do is to reach out and have one-on-ones for the student representatives at the VPSOL campuses, because we would definitely like to hear more from them on what's going on and what they need, and I feel like we haven't really had the opportunity to do that thus far. So I guess we will pull the emails and email you folks if you can begin thinking of stuff that you would like to see from WUSA, or any information you can provide that's specific to lived experiences of your campus. I know that's something I'm really interested in looking at is for folks in Stratford, I guess how the housing situation is in terms of finding, I guess, rental properties and whatnot to stay on, and if we have to do some more targeted advocacy there. I know we meet generally with like city councilors in Waterloo, and we talk to like Kitchener sometimes, but haven't had the opportunity to talk to any city officials in Stratford, and figure that might be useful. So, yep.
Thank you, VP Emo. Next, we will move on to Councillor Drag. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so if you could just let me know, so I know how to do it in the future, but Councillor Rebecca.
It's Dragusin, and no worries, Rebecca also works.
Thank you.
So from basically what I've been hearing from a lot of counselors, and I would like to second this opinion, is that mostly people want to return to on-campus learning, just finding the best way to do that. And I think one of the concerns that has been brought up a lot is the fact that there's still uncertainty about what courses will be offered in person, and whether or not it'll be worth it for students to have to move back, or if they need to start planning now. But I was under the impression that the schedule of classes is kind of an unchangeable and official announcement of what courses will be in person and not in person. And if that's the case, I think that kind of removes any worries about uncertainty involving in-person classes. But if that's not the case, and if there were issues about it in the fall, I think that could be something that WUSA can advocate for, making it clear now during the course selection period about what courses are going to be in person, and really sticking to that.
Thank you, Councillor Dragonson. Councillor Mackey, direct response, go ahead.
Yeah, so this term, speaking my own experience, I had one class that I enrolled in specifically because it was meant to be offered in person. And about a week before the term started, I got an email from the instructor saying that he's decided that it's going to be online only. I also had another class that I also enrolled in because it was in person. And I found out that that instructor is going to be and has been recording and live streaming all of the lectures. So students who may have come to campus or signed a lease because they had that course that was that they thought was in person only, turned out that while it is in person, students can also do that course entirely online. And there was no way for students to know that while picking their courses. So yeah, I wish it were unchangeable, but it's not. And also the class schedule doesn't capture like complexities of it's an in-person course where the instructor is live streaming the lectures. So you don't need to come to class if you don't want to.
Thank you, Councillor Macri, for the direct response. Now you have the new point that you can bring up. Or actually, sorry, there's a direct response from Councillor Dragonson again. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks for that feedback and that context, Vincent. So given that, I think it'd be really valuable for WUSA to try to advocate for some sort of consistency. So as I think Vincent mentioned before too, advocating for if it's an in-person class, all of the teachers or profs are supposed to live stream it also, or make a recording of it, or just having some sort of consistency in making professors accountable to the initial announcement, I think would be really valuable for students.
Thank you, Councillor Dragonson. Councillor Macri, go ahead.
Thanks. So I wanted to raise some other issues. So I've also spoken to students, and the students who are on campus, a lot of them are telling me that the reopening and just being able to have in-person classes and socialize safely outdoors has been very beneficial to their mental health. I am concerned about what will happen when the weather is no longer amenable to socializing outdoors. I think we need to provide a way for students to safely socialize, because if we don't, they'll do it anyway, but in a way that might not be safe. And I saw something about them increasing some restrictions with the dining area in SLC and restricting like students who aren't in residence from accessing it because students weren't following the rules. I think that strong enforcement of the current rules should be favored against introducing additional restrictions in response to people not following restrictions in the first place. Like if people aren't following the rules, I don't know that more rules is going to help. I think more enforcement is what you need.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. I guess I'm next. Kind of like bringing up something that VP Schwartz responded to about the benefits of online learning, about moving away from finals and having more assessments, which are assignments and examples and case studies, which is a good thing for sure. Like we shouldn't just be focusing on final exams as way of figuring out how well the students are learning the material. At the same time, this has increased the number of weekly assignments someone has to do, and the added pressure is not helpful sometimes. Like I've had weeks where I had to do 8 or 9 assignments for 5 courses, which is not a fun thing to do in a week. So like there are things like we still be figuring out how we, while moving it from final exams, but still not overwhelming students with assessments, which just in general. And secondly, I think by this time, like it's been 2 years since everything has been online. Most, if not all, the courses that university offers probably have had recorded lectures. So the least the university could do is like even if a class is in person, we could reuse those lectures as a what's the word I'm looking for? I guess a top on, and like if students cannot make it, so like you already have recorded lectures, you don't need to re-record new lectures every term now. So just use them and provide those as resources to students if they want to look at the recordings from another prof later on. There might be some issues with intellectual property about this, but I would hope profs are nice enough to share their recordings with other profs who are teaching the course in future terms. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Connor, you have a POI. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if it's possible at this point, if there's any other counselors that still want to discuss this issue, if we could postpone this to next meeting, because I just realized we are 35 minutes over our scheduled allotment of time for the meeting. So we just want to be respectful to other people's time and other people's commitments.
The agenda says the meeting will adjourn no later than 2:30 p.m. That's only 1:30 right now.
Gotcha. I thought it was, I saw the team's invite for up to one.
But yeah, like unless anyone else has anything else to do, I think this is the last item on the agenda, and I'm really hoping we can finish. Councillor Mackey, direct response. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is a good point, Cannon, that instructors can just post the lecture videos from when the course was offered online. This might not always work if, sometimes different instructors will teach the course in a very different way, such that, maybe the material's in a different order or taught differently, so that might not always work. But it should work in enough situations that I think if we can at least get to the point where enough courses are like hybrid that students can carefully pick their courses to be all online if that's something they desire, I think that should deal with a lot of the concerns. I don't think every professor is going to agree to record or live stream their lectures, but if we can just get enough that students have the option of participating online only, I think that I would be happy with that outcome, and I think most students would be happy with that outcome.
Thank you,
as a sort of
Mackey.
realistic goal.
Councillor Dragusin, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that for the arts faculty, I don't really think that professors sharing past lectures with each other will be something that they will do or something that makes sense, because the content is really catered to what that prof wants to teach, and it's really individual. It's not like the same concepts are taught in every section of the same course if it's a different prof is teaching it. So I don't think that would work, but I mean, I support the hybrid approach. If it's taught by the same prof as it's been in the past 2 years, then I think that could work.
Thank you, Councillor Dragonson. Would any councillor like to speak on this motion or discussion item, sorry? All going once, going twice. Councillor Macri, go ahead.
I have a question for the Vice President of Education. With all this feedback, how do you plan to move forward on this advocacy?
Vice President Emo.
I was just joking to Catherine that I need an AVP return to campus. But that's probably not the direction where that's going. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi. I will probably have a conversation with the AVP academic at the university for things that are relevant through that channel, and then we'll have a conversation to Chris Reed, who's sort of a similar role but more student-facing things. A lot of the themes that you've mentioned here align with stuff we were already saying or advocating for. So it gives us a sense of where, I guess, the state of affairs is currently at. I'll say that sort of conversations and critiques about, I guess, the benefit of having, I guess, like not having big exams versus the downsides of having all these mini projects and it feeling like it's a lot. That's something that I believe has been discussed at like undergraduate senate, EAC, a couple other forums. So I think the university is already aware of the fact that it's a bit of a balancing act. yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes. But in general, it's just reaffirming stuff that I was already taking on. I guess, assign more to the my AVP academic, if that is necessary. Might want some support from the faculty societies, your VP academics, to have conversations specifically with your deans or professors or whatnot. So I guess that's just something to be aware of. And if society precedents, if you can encourage your VPs to take sort of leadership there in terms of proactively addressing some of the concerns, that would be great and really helpful for me. But yeah, it's a lot, but it can be tackled. So thank you again for all the feedback and thoughts and consideration.
Thank you, Vice President Yimo. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on this item before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay. We're moving to new business. Does anyone has any new business? Wiki, you have a point of information, go ahead.
Is it possible for whatever's going on with like team? I'm not sure if it's like an individual problem for teams or if it's just an organizational. Because like I think Councillor Shorma and probably a lot of other councillors are experiencing. Like I'm on my computer, but I also have to, or enough to talk, I have to use my phone to access the chat. And somehow that can get all sorted by next meeting because this wasn't like this last meeting, so I'm not sure what's going on.
I think the issue started as soon as we started using the speaker email to send out invites for the meeting. So I guess this is something Ben and I will look into. It might be weird organization rules about who can access chat and who cannot, but we'll definitely look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing as there is no new business, moving on to announcements. Does anyone have any announcements to make? Go ahead, President Easton.
Yeah, a brief one. We have a by-election underway for the vacant seats in science, St. Jerome's, Renison, Kitchener, and Stratford, I think. Hopefully I remember those properly. And also there are 3 vacancies in Senate for undergraduate representatives from environment, engineering, and science as well. So for people in those constituencies, please tap some shoulders, encourage people to run. Yeah, that's sort of it.
Thank you. Next we have VP Dong would like to make an announcement. VP Dong, go ahead. Or I'm assuming it's VP Yimo using VP Dong, but go ahead.
USA applications are open. I'm just going to read for staff. We need delegates to come to the USA General Assembly. It's a good time if you're into this kind of thing. You can do it for a weekend. The policy papers we're talking about this year, I think, are like system vision. I shouldn't speak to which papers they're doing, but it's cool. Ask Steph if you have questions about it.
Next is, I'm just going to read the other announcement from the VP, which is Committee on Access and Disability. They are looking for at-large members. So if you know someone who might be interested in this work, please ask them to apply. Next, we will go to Councillor Holland's motion announcement.
Hi, sorry, I should have included this in the engineering update, but I just wanted to share that the engineering C&D is open, and we'd just like to advertise that because I think we're the only one on campus that does have it open. And it's open on the bottom floor of E7 for anyone that wants to spread the news about that.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. VP Schwartz, go ahead.
I also note that iNews is open. And assuming that counselors have all filled out the form, I think that they have a discount there. So that's very exciting. The other thing I wanted to note, because I think Ben, I just wanted to reiterate from what Ben said, is that the governance review is going forward. It's a really big deal. And as he said, if you know any at-large students that would be interested in participating in the governance review, refer them to Ben, refer them or to the speaker, I suppose, and get them involved so that we can have as effective a process as we can, and we can really build a good structure going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, VP Schwartz. I don't see anyone else making any announcements. I guess the last announcement will be our next council meeting is on Sunday, October 24, 2021 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Seeing no new announcements, I will adjourn this meeting at 1:46 p.m. Yippee, we did it, folks.